You're listening to Fanfiction Reader, where stories come alive through sound. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the tale.
Chapter 111 War Slave Zhao Hai's eyes gleamed as he said, "This can be tested." "Right, Grandpa Green. Do you think those undead creatures can also do this?" Green's eyes lit up even more upon hearing Zhao Hai's words, and he nodded. "Young master, let's go to Iron Mountain Fort right away. There are still some magical beasts left there. We'll see if it works." Zhao Hai nodded, his mind moved, and he followed Green and Meg into the farm. Then, through the teleportation point, they entered the living room of Iron Mountain Fort. Merlin wasn't in the living room. Currently, only she, Wood, and Stone are responsible here, and she's very busy. There are really a lot of things to do at Iron Mountain Fort now. Besides planting alfalfa on the mountain, they also need to plant oil fruit trees. Anyway, they had already planned to plant oil fruit trees on the mountain, so now they're taking this opportunity to plant them. The alfalfa planted on Iron Mountain is almost done. Zhao Hai and the others don't plan to harvest this alfalfa. They'll let it grow naturally on the mountain, then wither and die, and then turn the soil over to let the alfalfa become fertilizer for the mountain. Then they'll plant another batch and turn it over again. After several times, the soil quality on the mountain will naturally improve. Although they could achieve the same effect by harvesting the alfalfa and leaving the roots, it's not as effective as leaving the whole plant. Zhao Hai doesn't lack feed now, so he simply decided not to harvest any of the alfalfa. The oil fruit trees planted on the mountain are very sparse. The seeds of these oil fruit trees have been modified by the space, so they don't have many drawbacks. Otherwise, oil fruit trees are very susceptible to insect plagues. However, another reason Green and the others aren't worried about these oil fruit trees suffering from insect plagues is that Zhao Hai's space has insecticide. Green and the others know this because the space used the poison from the xenomorphs to improve the insecticide. Now, that insecticide is probably poisonous enough to kill people. The men are still repairing the castle and making some useful things. You wouldn't notice anything if you didn't tidy up the castle, but once you start, you realize that many places need to be rebuilt, and the work is quite a lot. Fortunately, there are now many undead creatures helping. If there are things that some people can't lift, they can just let these undead creatures do it. To cope with this situation, Zhao Hai also specifically left 100 humanoid undead creatures at the castle, only taking the remaining 200 humanoid undead creatures to Greenstone Villa. Now, besides Anne and the other slaves, there are only those 100 humanoid undead creatures and dozens of beast-shaped undead creatures at the castle. The remaining 400 or so beast-shaped undead creatures are wandering around the castle, just in case someone sneaks into the castle. As soon as Zhao Hai left the living room, he immediately sent a message to those undead creatures, summoning them to wait for him outside the castle. The three of them hurried out of the castle and saw Anne and the others repairing a section of the castle wall on the way. As soon as Anne and the others saw Zhao Hai and the other two, they immediately greeted them. The three of them just nodded and quickly went outside the castle. As soon as the three of them arrived outside the castle, a group of undead creatures ran over from a distance, precisely those 400 or so patrolling the castle's perimeter. These undead creatures quickly ran up to Zhao Hai and stood there, looking at Zhao Hai. Zhao Hai didn't waste any words, waving the evil spirit staff in his hand and saying in a deep voice, "Square formation." Those undead creatures immediately formed a square formation, perfectly square and very neatly arranged. Zhao Hai couldn't help but nod and waved his hand again, "Move." The square formation began to move slowly, but the formation never became chaotic, remaining neat and tidy, as if it had been cut out with a knife. As Zhao Hai commanded, their speed increased, but the formation remained unchanged, still square, with no one too fast or too slow. Zhao Hai and Green were excitedly watching all of this. For them, this was truly an unexpected gain. These undead creatures could really march in formation, and the formation wouldn't be chaotic at all. This was really too important for them. If they used these undead creatures as the basis to build a cavalry, what would the combat power of this cavalry be like? Just thinking about it was exciting. Zhao Hai also had those undead creatures change into several other formations. As he expected, once this formation setting function was used, those undead creatures wouldn't be able to change formations without his command. After understanding these things, Zhao Hai dismissed those undead creatures and followed Green and the others back to the castle's living room. The castle's living room had been rearranged again, similar to the original and quite simple, but also very nice. Once in the living room, Zhao Hai and Green sat down, and Meg took the initiative to brew cocoa for the two of them. Green looked excitedly at Zhao Hai and said, "Young master, it seems this function is very useful. As long as we have this function, the Butte family's cavalry will be the best cavalry in the world in the future. With this function, we can maximize the capabilities of the cavalry. Zhao Hai also nodded. Although he had never led troops or been on the battlefield, he was a military enthusiast. When he was on Earth, he often visited some military websites. He was very clear about what a powerful cavalry represented in the age of cold weapons: absolute power, absolute strength. If the Buddha family had an incomparably powerful cavalry, no one in this world would dare to easily move against them, and they would become a powerful vassal. The strongest warriors in this world are those 9th level great warriors, but you must know that 9th level warriors don't take action easily. They are like nuclear weapons on Earth, mostly serving as a deterrent. Unless it comes to a matter of life and death for the family, they generally won't take action. Most of the time, they are comprehending the Tao of Heaven, hoping to break through the 9th level and advance to a higher level, the 10th level, which is the path to becoming a god. Everyone believes that as long as they can break through the 9th level, they can reach the 10th level. People also believe that the 10th level is the realm of gods. As long as they reach the 10th level, they can become gods. It is precisely because of this reason that almost all 9th level experts are working hard to comprehend, hoping that one day they can break through to the 10th level, become a god, and obtain immortal life and invincible power. Therefore, you generally don't see 9th level experts taking action on the continent. 8th level experts are already the top experts on the continent, and the strength of a family mainly depends on how much combat power it has, how many available soldiers it has. On the continent, nobles can have private soldiers, especially within their own fiefdoms. You can raise private soldiers as long as you pay the empire's taxes and don't launch a rebellion. The king generally turns a blind eye to this kind of thing because, no matter what, those great nobles have existed for too long. Sometimes, even if the king wants to control them, he doesn't have the ability. If he really pushes them too hard, something might happen. The main thing is that the families of those great nobles generally have a 9th level expert sitting in town. Even if the 9th level expert doesn't take action, the deterrent power is still there. No one dares to underestimate a 9th level expert. The reason why the Buddha family was destroyed in the past was because their foundation was too weak. Although they also had fiefdoms, they had been managing them for too short a time. The taxes they collected were only enough to pay the empire's taxes, and they didn't have money to raise soldiers. Although they had Green and Merlin, two 8th level experts, 8th level experts didn't have the same deterrent power as 9th level experts, so the Buddha family was destroyed. If the Buddha family had the most powerful cavalry on this continent, no one would dare to do anything to them. Even the king of the Aksu Empire wouldn't easily attack them. Green continued excitedly, however, undead creatures are not suitable for writing. If Zhao Zui and the others can catch some high-level magical beasts in the corpse swamp, and the young master uses the space to breed those magical beasts in large numbers, then we will have a large number of riding beasts, and we can form a cavalry. Zhao Hai smiled slightly and said, okay, but what we lack now is not just magical beasts, but also people. Even if we have magical beasts now, we don't have soldiers. Green's face darkened and said, that's right, there are also people. It's a pity that we don't have anyone now, and a cavalry is not so easy to train. It seems this matter needs to be considered in the long term. Zhao Hai said with a smile, it doesn't matter, we can take our time. There is time. As long as we make a deal with Laura, with a large amount of gold coins to support us, we can have more manpower and form a cavalry. Green nodded and said, it seems that this is the only way. As long as we have money, we can buy more slaves and even buy some war slaves. In that case, our cavalry can be formed quickly. Zhao Hai nodded. He knew what Green was talking about when he said war slaves. They were slaves used for fighting. Many of these slaves were defeated soldiers, or warriors who had made mistakes and were demoted to slaves. These people were very skilled and some were even 5th level warriors. However, the price of these slaves was also very high. An ordinary slave used to cost only about 10 gold coins, but now it only costs about 5. A war slave used to cost at least 1,000 gold coins. This was the old price. Now it costs at least 2,000 gold coins. Some expensive ones can even reach a sky-high price of 10,000 gold coins, and there are still no sellers. Ordinary slaves, slave owners generally only need to give them some rice. Now, some even use moldy rice to get by. But it's different for martial slaves. Martial slaves generally have very good treatment. Some even have a better life than ordinary people. This is the difference between martial slaves and ordinary slaves. It can be said that even if the Buddha family spent all their money now and bankrupted themselves, they wouldn't be able to buy a few war slaves, let alone form a cavalry. So they need money now, a lot of gold coins. Those great nobles, which one isn't richer than a country with assets calculated in the hundreds of millions? People like Zhao Hai and the others are almost like beggars in the eyes of those great nobles. Chapter 112. Too optimistic. At noon, Merlin, Wood, and Stone returned to the castle. As soon as they arrived, and told them that Zhao Hai and Green had returned. The three were surprised because they knew Zhao Hai liked to stay in the space. To be honest, they liked it too. The tranquil environment of the space was their favorite. Now, hearing and say that Zhao Hai and the others had returned, the three immediately entered the main castle. Seeing Green and the others sitting in the living room, Merlin was stunned and quickly walked over, saying, "Young master, Green, why are you back? Is something the matter?" Green smiled slightly and said, "Good news, back to do an experiment with the young master." Then he explained his and Zhao Hai's conjecture. Merlin's eyes lit up as she listened. For years, she had been helping Green manage the Buta family, so she knew the family's situation. Hearing Green's words, she immediately understood what it meant. However, Green's next words about the problem of people were like a bucket of cold water, instantly calming Merlin down. Merlin nodded and said, "Yes, people are indeed a big problem, but I don't agree with buying martial slaves. The martial slaves sold on the continent are generally not domestic slaves. These slaves are either prisoners of war or criminals, none of whom are good people. These guys are likely to slack off on the battlefield. Buying such people is useless. We might as well buy some ordinary slaves and train them into cavalry." Green said with a wry smile, "It's easy for you to say, but is cavalry so easy to train? Besides, even if we buy cavalry now, we don't have anything for them to ride. You say those martial slaves are useless, but why can other large families use them?" Merlin rolled her eyes at Green and said, "Are you old fool confused? Other families can use them because they have enough power to deal with those martial slaves. The martial slaves don't dare to rebel. If we really had that much power, would we need to buy martial slaves? Besides, don't we have suitable mounts right now? Let those people train on undead creatures first, and then train with the mounts when we have them." Green thought for a moment and said, "That's also a way. If it really works, that would be great, and the price of buying ordinary slaves is much cheaper than martial slaves." Then he frowned and said, "But there's also a problem. Those slaves generally haven't practiced martial arts. Their combat power is far inferior to those warriors. The cavalry trained in this way will also have limited power." Merlin smiled slightly and said, "I've thought about this for a long time. Why is it so difficult for those ordinary people to learn magic and battle aura? Isn't it because they have too little exposure to these things, and they usually eat ordinary vegetables, not magic vegetables? But everything produced in the young master's space is magic vegetables. These days I've observed that even the slaves we bought before are now strong and healthy, and some are very suitable for learning magic. In the future, we can cultivate slaves like this. I think in a few years, they can become combat-ready soldiers." This time, Green didn't object. The vegetables produced in the space were really magical. Not to mention anything else, just take the radish, the magic radish. Magic radish on the continent can only be regarded as the most common magic vegetable, and the cheapest. Of course, the effect is also the smallest. Eating it doesn't help with the cultivation of magic or battle aura because the magic power contained in this vegetable is really too little. However, the magic radish produced in the space is an exception. The magic power contained in the magic radish in the space is very powerful, about 50 times that of the ordinary magic radish bought on the continent. The magic power is very sufficient, and the magic power content of some other vegetables they don't recognize in the space is no less than that of the magic radish, and some are even higher. It can be said that Green's strength is about to break through the 9th level, which is also related to these magic vegetables. Thinking of this, Green couldn't help but turn to look at Zhao Hai. Zhao Hai smiled slightly and said, "This is easy to handle. As long as the space is upgraded, there will be plenty of good magic vegetables. Like radishes, 10 acres of land can produce about 8,000 to 10,000 caddies. Producing so much at once is enough for many people to eat. Like that pumpkin, 1 acre of land can produce 6,000 caddies. Planting a few acres is enough to eat for many days. There's no need to worry about this." Green and the others couldn't help but look happy. Zhao Hai continued, "And as long as we buy slaves, we can also let them eat the food produced in the space. I think that will also be useful. In addition, in the future, there will be meat such as blue-eye rabbits produced in the space. I want to train those slaves into warriors, which is not difficult." When Green and Merlin heard Zhao Hai say this, their eyes lit up. It was indeed as Zhao Hai said. Now that they have the existence of the space, whether it is magic vegetables or food and a lot of meat, they all have magic power. If they use these things to cultivate warriors, then the progress of the warriors will definitely be amazing. You must know that even those large families cannot afford to give ordinary soldiers magic vegetables. However, in this way, their income will be reduced. It seems that the land area in the space is still too small. If it is larger, there will be no problem. Green thought for a while and said, it seems that the most important thing for us now is to upgrade the space and open up more land. In this way, the young master can improve more land and the Buddha family will have more income. Only in this way can we slowly develop. We are a little too impatient. Merlin nodded and said, yes, the foundation of our Buddha family is still too weak and our identity cannot be exposed. The most important thing is that even with this identity, we still have a mysterious and powerful enemy. In this case, we must be careful. Zhao Hai nodded and said, as long as we know we have this ability, we still have to take it step by step, otherwise, we will be in danger. Merlin nodded and said, then we should not have too much action, but still develop in a low-key manner. Now the most important thing is cooperation with Laura. As long as we have money, we can buy some rare plants, so that we can upgrade the young master's space. As long as the young master's space is upgraded, and the void water on his body is lifted, then the young master can learn magic or battle aura, and in the future, the people of the Buddha family can learn magic and battle aura. This is more important than creating a cavalry team. Green and Zhao Hai were stunned by Merlin's words, but they had to admit that what Merlin said was right. If the space cannot be upgraded faster and the void water on Zhao Hai's body cannot be lifted sooner, then the Buddha family will still have no hope of revival. Green nodded and said, yes, I didn't expect you, old woman, to be more clear than I thought. It seems that I am really too anxious. Okay, young master, let's go back to the Greenstone Mountain Villa. Laura will be back in 2 days. We still have to complete this transaction first. We also have to talk to them about the fruit oil business, as well as blue-eye rabbits and scale-horned horses. Young master, we also have to try to talk to Laura about those vegetables that we have never seen before and see if we can sell some money. What we have to do now is to develop silently, grow silently, accumulate money and strength and wait for the day to soar into the sky. Zhao Hai nodded and said, yes, the most profitable business in this world is the monopoly business. If those unique vegetables in our space can buy a good price, then we will have a monopoly business on the continent. At that time, we can have more income. It's not too late to develop slowly when we have money. Green nodded and said, our development is already good now. We have reached the scale we have now when we arrived in the Black Earth wilderness. Now we are not without the ability to resist at all, and with the young master space, the safety of our people can be completely guaranteed. It seems that this time the development is smooth. We are a little too hasty, especially this time we defeated Garen and the others. We are all a little too optimistic. Zhao Hai smiled wryly. Wasn't he the same? Since using the space to defeat Garen and the others, he was really a little too confident. If they really fight against those big nobles now, they are not opponents at all. Don't forget that those big nobles also have 9th level masters in their hands. Although these masters don't often take action, as long as those big nobles are willing to pay a certain price, they can still ask a 9th level master to take action once, but the price is too high, so ordinary big families will not ask a 9th level master to take action. When dealing with the Buddha family before, they did not ask a 9th level master to take action because the price was too high. In their opinion, it was not worth it. It was better to throw the Buddha family to the dead place of the Black Earth wilderness and let them fend for themselves. But if they find that the Buddha family already has the power to turn the tables, and that this power can bring them huge benefits, they may really ask a 9th level master to take action. In that case, Zhao Hai is not sure that he can survive. 8th level masters like Green and Merlin are already so powerful. They did not use their full strength in the previous battles. How powerful will 9th level masters be? Zhao Hai can't even imagine. He can't stay in the space forever. Once he goes out, a 9th level master may kill him in seconds, and then everything will be over. Thinking of this, Zhao Hai let out a long breath and said, yes, we have been too optimistic for a while. It seems that it is better to be low-key. Grandma Merlin, come to the space to rest at night. It is good for your cultivation there. If our Buddha family has a 9th level master to sit in town, no one will dare to attack our family. Chapter 113. Laura is back for the next 3 days. Zhao Hai stayed obediently in the Rocky Mountain. In those 3 days, plus the previous half day, Zhao Hai harvested 11 seasons of radishes. 2 seasons were from 6 mu of land, and the remaining 9 seasons were from 8 mu. He also harvested 2 magic peaches, but Zhao Hai didn't continue planting them because he didn't need to. The 4 he had were enough for now. The oil fruit was also harvested twice during these 3 days, so Zhao Hai wasn't worried anymore. He had enough radishes in his space to trade with Laura 10 times. Most importantly, Zhao Hai now had 30,000 mature fire-scale fish in his warehouse. This was after Zhao Hai controlled the breeding quantity of the fire-scale fish, otherwise, the number would have been even greater. In addition, there were 300 mature rabbits and 1,000 baby rabbits in the pasture, along with 10 adult scaled horses and 600 foals. These were all produced under Zhao Hai's control. If he didn't control it, the number would be even higher. Zhao Hai underestimated the breeding ability of 1,000 animals after being digitized. 1,000 animals would breed every few hours in the pasture. After more than 70 hours of breeding, the number would be terrifying. However, Zhao Hai was no longer raising fire-scale fish. The reason why he only had a few mature scaled horses and blue-eyed rabbits these days was that he gave the fire-scale fish priority for maturity. Although there were only 30,000 fire-scale fish now, this number was undoubtedly a drop in the bucket for the entire Ark continent, but for fire-scale fish, this number was not small at all. If he really released all 30,000 fire-scale fish into the continent at once, the entire continent would be shaken because the entire continent's annual output of fire-scale fish was less than 30,000. Zhao Hai understood that if he put all 30,000 fire-scale fish into the market of the Ark continent at once, they would be finished. All the great nobles of the entire continent would look for them, and they probably wouldn't even know how they died. Now Zhao Hai had harvested 300 blue-eyed rabbits. These 300 adult rabbits that he had harvested had all finished giving birth. Zhao Hai didn't plan to sell them, but planned to keep them and use these rabbits to treat the slaves to a good meat meal. Meat, for those slaves, was such a rare thing. Not to mention these slaves, even their fathers and grandfathers might not have eaten meat. Of course, this refers to those slaves born into slavery, that is, those whose ancestors were slaves, not slaves like Zhu and En, who became slaves halfway through their lives. Before Zhu and En became slaves, they could still eat the meat of things like long-haired pigs and blue-eyed rabbits. However, Zhao Hai also spent a lot of feed during these 3 days, but this feed was nothing to him. He could cope with radish leaves alone. Although the blue-eyed rabbit is a magical beast, the meat of the blue-eyed rabbit does not have the same effect as magical vegetables. Zhao Hai and the others also tried to make a rabbit and taste it, but it was not the case at all. The meat of the blue-eyed rabbit in the space was different. Not only did it taste very good, but also the magic power was very abundant, which was very beneficial for the cultivation of magic power and fighting spirit. The fire-scale fish was even more so. Not only did it taste great, but the benefits it brought were even more amazing than the effects of blue-eyed rabbits. Eating the meat of fire-scale fish was almost catching up with some magic potions. The medium-scaled horse also seemed to have changed. Not only was its endurance amazing, but its running speed was also very fast. If the scaled horse could only be used to carry things before, then the current scaled horse could almost be used as a war horse. All these changes are related to the space. The space has improved some of the shortcomings of the animals, and at the same time, everything produced in the space has become a magic medicine-like thing with strong magic power. This is definitely good news for Zhao Hai and the others. The things produced in the space have this ability, which is very beneficial for them to build an army in the future. During these 3 days, Zhao Hai also paid attention to the situation in Casa City. Their biggest disadvantage now is that there is no intelligence network in Casa City, which makes them deaf and blind. But now they really don't have a suitable person to be their eyes and ears. After all, the dead soldiers under his command are all undead creatures and cannot appear in the city. If Xiao Chong and the others pretend to be black magicians and go to the city, it won't work either. Now Casa City is too sensitive to black magicians. If a black magician appears, they will definitely try their best to investigate and it may reveal flaws. However, Green still arranged for those dead soldiers to squat outside Casa City. One is to prevent anyone from attacking them again, and the other is to wait for Laura. Now the most important thing for Zhao Hai and the others is to trade with Laura, so they want to know when Laura will come back. Of course, knowing when Laura will come back does not necessarily mean they have to see her. Zhao Hai just wants to know when Laura will come back, and he is also testing Laura. They have a life-saving grace for Laura. If Laura takes the initiative to see them after she comes back, it means that she is a grateful person, and Zhao Hai and the others can cooperate with Laura in a deeper way. If Laura doesn't come to them, then Zhao Hai and the others will still cooperate with Laura, but there will not be too much cooperation, just that kind of ordinary cooperation. In order to make Laura not too suspicious about the origin of the fire-scale fish, Zhao Hai raised a lot of fire-scale fish in the hot springs in the Green Mountain Manor, and also put the red aquatic plants that the fire-scale fish ate in the space into the warm ditch in the yard, so that it can cover people's eyes and ears. However, Zhao Hai can't tell Laura about the origin of radishes and other things. I believe Laura won't ask. After all, everyone has their own secrets. The 3 days passed quickly and Zhao Hai and the others lived very fulfilling lives. During these 3 days, Zhao Hai not only had to take care of the space, but also had to return to the Iron Mountain Canyon every day to improve the land in the canyon and plant all the improved land. He was very busy every day. At the same time, Zhao Hai also did an experiment. He soaked some corn seeds in the water in the space until they germinated, and then let Merlin arrange for people to plant some on the black land outside the castle. Zhao Hai wanted to see if these seeds could grow. If the reason why nothing can grow on the black land is because the magical beasts from the corpse swamp ran here to detoxify and pollute the land, then these space-improved corn seeds should be able to grow, because Zhao Hai watered them with some water from the moat when planting these seeds. The water in this moat has been improved by the water in the space and can detoxify. Of course, the effect will not be as good as the water in the space, but Zhao Hai also wants to try to see if this diluted water can solve the problem of the black land. However, this will have to wait a few days to see the results. It is impossible to see any results in too short a time. After all, planting corn outside is completely different from planting it in the space. During these 3 days, Zhao Hai also contacted Zhao Zui and the others to see how their progress was. It was okay. These days, they had entered about 50 miles into the swamp, and they had also encountered some undead creatures and some magical beasts, but unfortunately, the levels of these magical beasts and undead creatures were very low and were of no use at all, so they did not capture them. And some of the plants that grow in the swamp are not special yet, so they have not collected them. Zhao Hai is not in a hurry. No one knows how big the corpse swamp is. Now Zhao Zui and the others' main task is to explore the road. Once the road is clear, everything will be easy to say. During these 3 days, Green went to the forest again and dug up some plants, but unfortunately, most of the things he dug up were the same as what he had dug up before. Even those that were not the same failed to upgrade the space. The forest adjacent to Casa City has also been destroyed. There are no strong magical beasts at all. There are only some low-level magical beasts. These magical beasts are not of much use to the space. Although Green also caught some back, they failed to upgrade the pasture, because those animals had nothing to offer and were directly wiped out by the space. This also made Zhao Hai understand that it is more difficult to upgrade the space pasture than the farm, but he is not in a hurry. Now the pasture can raise 1,000 animals, which is not a small number. Even if the pasture has not been upgraded, it is enough. Now Zhao Hai has stocked the pasture with blue-eyed rabbits and scaled horses. He has collected all the original mature rabbits and scaled horses, and the new ones are all cubs, 700 blue-eyed rabbits and 300 scaled horses. However, Zhao Hai did not plan to stock too many scaled horses. After all, scaled horses can only be used to pull things, and they are the lowest level, even one level lower than the flaming horses used to pull customers in the city. Zhao Hai plans to keep only 1,000 scaled horses in the space, and spend the rest of the time raising more rabbits. But he can't raise too many, otherwise it will become a disaster. In addition to providing them with meat, rabbit skins can also be used to make clothes for the winter, and he also wants to see if he can cooperate with Laura on the blue-eyed rabbit business. If possible, then he will prepare to raise blue-eyed rabbits in large quantities. Now he is not in a hurry to raise blue-eyed rabbits in the Iron Mountain mines. He plans to start after some tools are bought. Now he has a stone mill and a roller, but he still lacks a bellows for threshing grain, as well as machines such as oil presses. Raising blue-eyed rabbits is not just about feeding them radish leaves, but also about feeding them other things, such as feed made from oil dregs, but he doesn't have these things yet, so he plans to wait until those machines arrive before starting to raise blue-eyed rabbits in the mines. 3 days later, in the evening, the dead soldiers squatting on the outskirts of Casa City sent a message to Zhao Hai that Laura was back and had just entered Casa City. Chapter 114. Kunjang. Laura sat calmly in the carriage, with Nier beside her. This was no longer the carriage they had used to go to Black Mountain Fortress. When they went, they kept a low profile for secrecy, using a very ordinary carriage. But on their return, they didn't need to be so discreet. Now they were in a 4-wheeled carriage pulled by 4 Snowdrift Divine Steeds. Snowdrift Divine Steeds are a Tier 4 water-type magical beast, resembling ordinary horses, but entirely snow-white without a single stray hair. They also possess some water magic. Most importantly, they are very docile and easy to tame. However, raising Snowdrift Divine Steeds is quite expensive, so not many in the continent can afford them. Even medium-sized nobles often can't. Owning a Snowdrift Divine Steed is a status symbol. The carriage Laura and Nier were in was no ordinary carriage either. The entire carriage was divided into 2 layers. The outer layer was made of ironfloat wood, which was not only as hard as steel, but also a magical insulator, capable of blocking most magical attacks. The inner layer was lined with bread cotton. Bread cotton is a unique plant on the continent, similar to cotton but extremely elastic and fluffy, making it an excellent material for furniture. Unfortunately, bread cotton production is very low, and it's not something ordinary people on the continent can afford. If Laura were to sell this carriage, she could easily get over 10,000 gold coins, and the total value of those 4 snowdrift divine steeds was over 50,000 gold coins. You could say that Laura and Nier weren't riding in a carriage at all, but a mobile gold mine. Laura wore a somber expression. Although the transaction was completed, their losses were significant. They lost over 300 guards, and if it weren't for Zhao Hai, even she might not have survived. Moreover, Laura had noticed something else. Someone within the family was targeting her. During her trip to Black Mountain Fortress, someone in the family had tried to take over her business, placing their people in her operations. However, those in the family underestimated her years of experience. Although the journey was turbulent, she was fully aware of everything happening in her business. Those placed by the family might seem to have taken control on the surface, but she could reclaim everything whenever she wanted. But Laura didn't want to act yet. She didn't know if this decision came from the family's upper echelons or was the work of other heirs. If it was a decision from the family's upper echelons, it would be troublesome, indicating that the family was abandoning them. In that case, the family would not only stop helping them, but also create problems for them. However, if it was just the work of those heirs, it wouldn't be a big deal. She could have a good fight with those guys and see who was stronger. Thinking of this, Laura frowned slightly. She wasn't afraid of fighting those people, but she lacked one thing: a master. Although Glenn was a tier 7 mage and considered quite skilled, he disliked fighting. So, despite his high magic level, he had little practical experience and probably wouldn't be of much use in a real fight. Laura was quite speechless about her father. She felt that he had chosen the wrong profession. He should have become a professional alchemist instead of a mage. She had never seen anyone so fond of studying magic arrays. Thinking of masters, Laura couldn't help but think of Zhao Hai. This mysterious dark mage was truly amazing. He had not only saved her life, but was now settling down in Casa City. Laura had her subordinates investigate Zhao Hai's background, but they found nothing. It was as if he had suddenly appeared. Although Laura had been away from Casa City, she knew everything about Zhao Hai. Don't underestimate the wisdom of this favored daughter of heaven. If she didn't have some skills, she wouldn't have been so successful in the Versailles Principality. Because she knew about Zhao Hai's recent activities, she valued him even more. She knew about Zhao Hai's 2 battles, and to be honest, she didn't expect such results. She had witnessed Zhao Hai's strength once. He was very powerful. But she also knew that the people who went to deal with Zhao Hai the second time were also very strong. One of them was even the nemesis of dark mages, a light-type white mage. But in that situation, those people disappeared without a trace, which chilled everyone's hearts. To be honest, Laura wasn't entirely at ease with Zhao Hai. The timing of Zhao Hai's appearance was too coincidental, and now he was living in Casa City. It all seemed to be aimed at her, making her even more suspicious of Zhao Hai's motives. Yes, she was saved by Zhao Hai, but don't forget that she was attacked by the undead mercenary corps, and Zhao Hai was also a dark mage. Who knew if there was any collusion between them? Nier sat beside Laura, watching Laura frown, and couldn't help but ask, "Miss, what's wrong? Is there something you're unhappy about?" Laura turned to look at Nier and smiled slightly. "It's nothing, Nier. After we get home, rest well. Tomorrow we'll visit Mr. Zhao Hai." Hearing Laura say this, Nier was stunned and asked, "Miss, aren't you worried that Mr. Zhao Hai might be targeting you? Then why do you still want to see him?" Laura smiled slightly. "No matter what, he saved us once, and I feel like he's not with the undead mercenary corps. It's just that the timing of his appearance is too coincidental. I'm a little suspicious, but we still need to see him tomorrow. First, to thank him for saving our lives, and second, to figure out his background." Nier nodded as if she understood. She didn't know much about these things. Laura protected her too well, and she had hardly been exposed to such conspiracies and tricks, as pure as a blank sheet of paper. Laura looked at Nier and smiled slightly, sighing. Nier was too innocent. Everything revolved around her, and she listened to her in everything, which also gave Laura a sense of protectiveness. Just then, the carriage stopped, and Searle's voice came, "Miss, we're home." Laura responded, and Nier immediately opened the carriage door. Searle immediately lowered the footstool, and Laura stepped out of the carriage. Laura's home was in the western district of Casa City, where the wealthy and noble resided. It was the residential area for nobles and wealthy people in Casa City. Although Laura's family was only a branch of the Magital family, no one dared to underestimate the Magital family on the continent, especially in a small country like the Versailles Principality. As the second in line to the clan Magital family, her status was even higher than that of the Versailles Duke. The Versailles Duke was just a duke of the Aksu Empire, while the Magital Merchant Guild was a super large guild spanning half the continent. The strength of the two families was not proportional, so even the Versailles Duke was very respectful to Clen and Laura. Laura's home was in the best location in the Western District, covering an area of over 100 acres, and was extremely magnificent. As soon as Laura got out of the carriage, an old man immediately greeted her. This old man was an old servant who her mother had brought with her and was now the butler of their house. Laura respected this old man like her own grandfather. When Laura was young, her mother passed away, and this old man had always taken care of her like his own granddaughter and taught her many things. It could be said that Laura's achievements today were inseparable from this old man. As soon as Laura saw the old man, she immediately greeted him and said, "Grandpa Kunjang, why did you come to pick me up at the door in person? Just let someone else do this." Kunjang looked at Laura with a doting smile and said, "It's okay. Didn't I hear that someone was going to deal with you? Of course, I have to see if my little Laura is injured." Humph, the undead mercenary corps, these bastards are getting more and more arrogant. One day I will destroy them. How dare they reach out to Laura? I don't think they want to live. Kunjang's words were not empty talk. He was also a strong man, an 8th level great knight. Laura's knight skills were learned from him. It's just that Kunjang couldn't easily take action. He had to stay at home to guard the place. Laura smiled and said, "Grandpa Kunjang, don't worry. I don't think the undead mercenary corps will bother me for a while. By the way, where's my dad?" When Clen was mentioned, Kunjang couldn't help but smile bitterly and said, "He's in his laboratory. He originally wanted to pick you up, but you know how he is. Once he starts an experiment, he forgets the time. I didn't ask anyone to call him." Laura also knew what kind of person Clen was and didn't mind, just smiling and saying, "It doesn't matter. By the way, Grandpa Kunjang, did you prepare something delicious for me?" Kunjang laughed and said, "Knowing you were coming back, how could I not prepare something delicious for you? Don't worry, I specially found someone to spend a lot of money to get 2 fire ding fish, so that you, this little glutton, can have a good meal." Hearing that there was her favorite fire ding fish, Laura couldn't help but cheer and say, "Great, there's fish to eat." After saying that, she pulled near and ran into the house. At this moment, she showed the appearance that she should have as a girl in her teens, not at all like the high and mighty, decisive daughter of heaven in front of outsiders. Kunjang looked at Laura and smiled slightly and followed in behind. In Clen's mansion, Kunjang's status was very detached. He could be regarded as a master in the mansion, because both Clen and Laura respected Kunjang very much, treating him like an elder. Kunjang also regarded Clen's mansion as his own home, doing everything he could for the mansion. Only he dared to talk to Laura like this, and only he dared to raise his voice to Clen. Chapter 115 Merchant. After dinner, Laura went to the living room. This living room wasn't the large one for entertaining guests, but a smaller one in the inner residence, accessible only to Laura's trusted aides. However, there weren't many people in the living room right now, only 3, Laura, Nier, and Quinn. Laura and Quinn were sitting on the sofa, each with a cup of cocoa in hand, while Nier stood behind Laura. After taking a sip of cocoa, Laura turned to Quinn and said, "Grandpa Quinn, I want to visit Rocky Mountain tomorrow to see Zhao Hai. What do you think?" Quinn also took a sip of cocoa and nodded when he heard Laura's words. "Alright, Zhao Hai's name has been frequently mentioned in Casa City lately, and he also saved your life, so you should pay him a visit. A few days ago, he even asked us to transport a batch of live blue-eyed rabbits for him. I don't know what he wants to do. Rocky Mountain is becoming a restricted area, and ordinary people won't approach it. I heard that the Vansel family also ran into a brick wall there recently, so this person seems very assertive. I'll go with you tomorrow to see if we can win him over. If we can, it would be a great thing for us." It could be said that before Laura took charge, Quinn was the one who supported Kieran's branch, so Laura would ask Quinn for his opinion on everything. That was why Kieran respected Quinn so much. Laura breathed a sigh of relief when she heard Quinn's words. Quinn glanced at her and said with a smile, "What? Do you have some doubts about Zhao Hai?" Laura nodded and said, "Yes, I was a little suspicious at first. Zhao Hai's appearance was too coincidental, and he's also a black magic user, so I was afraid he was colluding with the undead mercenary group, but now it doesn't seem like it." Quinn smiled and said, "It's not that it doesn't seem like it, it's that it definitely isn't. I've also investigated the undead mercenary group and found that they seem to have a very deep background. They should belong to a secret organization, while Zhao Hai doesn't. This time, Zhao Hai was attacked by the Vansel family, which is likely related to that organization. And I suspect that Garen, as well as the 3 high-level warriors who attacked Zhao Hai, are all related to that organization. This organization is very large and very mysterious. I haven't found out anything about it yet, but what is certain is that this organization has absolutely nothing to do with Zhao Hai." Laura's expression changed and she said, "There's such an organization?" The undead mercenary group is a black magic user, and Garen is a white magic user. How could they belong to the same organization? That's unlikely, right? Quinn looked at Laura and smiled slightly. Silly child, anything is possible. Do you think this world is as simple as you imagine? Do you think those white magic users attack black magic users because black magic users have done something evil? In fact, most black magic users in this world don't do evil, and those white magic users aren't necessarily cleaner than black magic users. It's just that their magic looks better than black magic, so they have always been misunderstood. Laura nodded, then said, if that mysterious organization is so powerful, it would have already become the dominant force. Why haven't we heard of their name on the continent? Quinn smiled and said, people with real power in this world don't necessarily have to become the dominant force. Any dynasty will have its downfall, but those powerful forces hidden underground are difficult to destroy. Some of these forces have existed longer than those ancient families. Their power has penetrated all aspects of the continent and is definitely a force to be reckoned with. This was the first time Laura had heard Quinn say this, and she couldn't help but ask in surprise, really? Who controls those forces? Quinn said with a wry smile, no one knows. There are many powerful forces on the continent, and no one knows who their real controllers are. Laura nodded and said, then is the attack against us this time also by those powerful forces? Quinn shook his head and said, no, if those powerful forces really wanted to deal with us, we wouldn't be sitting here now. Don't underestimate the power of those powerful forces. If they really wanted to deal with us, even the entire Magdal family might not be able to stop them. Laura said in surprise, they're that powerful? Quinn said with a wry smile, that's how powerful they are. The Magdal family is considered a powerful family on the continent, but it's still a little worse than those powerful forces. So I said that it's not that powerful force that wants to deal with us this time. It's likely that the undead mercenary group acted on its own, so we don't have to worry about anything. Laura nodded, then frowned again and said, then aren't Mr. Zhao Hai and the others in danger? They fought the undead mercenary group, so they will definitely face crazy revenge. Quinn smiled slightly and said, this Zhao Hai isn't that simple either. I suspect that his skills are also supported by a powerful force. Otherwise, how could a black magic user have so many high-level undead creatures, and those undead creatures seem to have been subdued on the continent? Can a magic user without any background do that? Laura was stunned for a moment and said, Grandpa Quinn, are you saying that Mr. Zhao Hai is also a member of that powerful force? Quinn nodded and said, it's very possible. Judging from their way of doing things, it's a bit like it. Generally, people from such underground powerful forces don't act too flamboyantly, and Zhao Hai is like that. Before he came to Casa City, he hadn't even registered with the Magic User Guild, and after he came to Casa City, he has always kept a low profile and never caused any trouble outside. All of this looks like those underground powerful forces. If Zhao Hai is really a member of an underground powerful force, then it's okay for us to contact them, and maybe it will be beneficial. Laura was stunned and said, what benefits can there be? If Zhao Hai also represents an underground powerful force, then the struggle between their powerful forces may involve us. Wouldn't we be in danger? Quinn smiled slightly and said, little Laura, after being a merchant for so many years, don't you understand? What is a merchant? A merchant is someone who maximizes profits. You can never become a qualified merchant with stability. A merchant's investment is also risky. Now we are investing. We'll go see tomorrow whether this Zhao Hai is suitable for investment. Laura was stunned, then said coquettishly, Grandpa Quinn, are you too mercenary? Do you want to invest in this too? Quinn looked at Laura and said calmly, little Laura, you must remember that a merchant only has two types of people around him in his life. One is worth investing in, and the other is not worth investing in. Even your friends and relatives are the same. If your friend is worth your investment, then you can invest in him and help him. He may bring you more benefits. The other type of person is not worth your investment. Even if this person is your relative or friend, you can help him, but this help must have a limit, because he cannot bring you any return. Laura looked at Quinn slyly and said, Grandpa Quinn, which type of person am I? Quinn coughed twice and glared at Laura, you are a special case, neither type. Laura giggled. She knew that Quinn's education of her was good, but very few merchants could actually do this, because to be a merchant like Quinn, you must always put profit first and be truly ruthless and unrighteous. It's okay to talk about it, but it's too difficult to do. Quinn looked at Laura's appearance and smiled helplessly. Laura was good in everything. She was smart and decisive in her work, but one thing was that she was still too soft-hearted now, and sometimes she was reluctant to be ruthless, which was very dangerous for a superior. However, Quinn could also understand that Laura was only 18 years old after all, and was still a young girl. It was impossible to ask such a young girl to be as decisive and ruthless as a superior. Quinn sighed and said, regardless of whether Zhao Hai is a member of an underground powerful force, his strength is certain. It's only good for us to befriend him, not bad. Let's go see him together tomorrow. If this Zhao Hai really doesn't have any intentions towards us, then we have to make friends with him. Laura nodded, then frowned again and said, Grandpa Quinn, no matter what, Mr. Zhao Hai saved my life. I have to prepare some gifts for him tomorrow. What kind of gifts do you think we should prepare? Quinn frowned and said, it's really not easy to prepare this gift. If the gift is too light, it won't show the status of our magical family. If the gift is too heavy, it will make Zhao Hai feel that we want to use these gifts to draw a line with him. This matter is really not easy to handle. Laura frowned and said, yes, but I've met Mr. Zhao Hai once and he seems to be very easy to get along with. And he is a magic user. I think we should choose a magic robe and a magic staff to give him. The last time I met him, I found that he was holding a very ordinary magic staff, and the magic robe on his body was also very ordinary. I think it's better to give him Moon Knight and Spirit Wind. Quinn nodded and said, that's a good idea. Moon Knight is a black magic robe which is perfect for giving to Zhao Hai. Although Spirit Wind is a wind-type magic staff, it also has a great amplification effect on black magic. It's just right to give these 2 years, and the total value of these two things has exceeded 50,000 gold coins. I think Zhao Hai should be satisfied. Chapter 116 Sharp Moon Knight Magic Robe is a black magic robe, rarely seen in the Ark continent these days. Pure black magic robes are scarce because they cover the magician too tightly, a style many magicians dislike. However, Moon Knight happens to be a very traditional black magic robe. Entirely black, it's woven from the down of the black demon eagle. The black demon eagle is a level 7 magical beast, not only swift in flight but also exceptionally brave. Most importantly, this eagle's defense is incredibly strong, with ordinary magic and battle aura attacks having little effect on it. The black demon eagle's down also possesses strong defensive capabilities and naturally carries black color. This black is the kind of dignified and luxurious black of the Sky's King, and also carries a hint of unruliness. This magic robe can not only defend against magic attacks below level 5, but also prevent battle aura attacks below level 4. Moreover, wearing this robe makes one impervious to water and fire, warm in winter and cool in summer. It is a very high-end magical item in the magic world, currently priced around 25 to 30,000 gold coins, and still hard to find even with the money. The Spirit Wind magic staff is made from the heartwood of century-old spirit willow trees, soaked in the blood of wind-type magical beasts. It not only greatly enhances wind-type magic, but also dark magic. The entire magic staff is cyan, and the head is inlaid with a wind-type magic crystal. Its current market price is between 20 and 25,000 gold coins. It can be said that the gift Laura and the others brought is truly valuable. 50,000 gold coins are equivalent to half a year's tax revenue for a small principality. The next morning, Laura, Near, and Kunt set off for chaotic Stone Mountain in a carriage, accompanied by only 20 guards led by Sir. Laura was quite confident, believing that no one would dare to attack her in Casa City, not even the Vancer family, because of her status. Daring to attack her here would be equivalent to taking action against the entire Magical family, which would invite retaliation from the entire Magical family. They were riding in a carriage pulled by Snowdrift divine steeds, so the speed was very fast. Sir and the other guards were riding level 3 magical beast gale horses, which were also very fast. Therefore, it would not take 2 days to get from Casa City to chaotic Stone Mountain, only half a day would be enough. As soon as Laura and the others left Casa City, Zhao Hai received the news, and he knew that the other party was coming for them. Zhao Hai was hoping to see this kind of result. Zhao Hai sat quietly in the living room of Greenstone Manor, with Green sitting beside him. Zhao Hai smiled and said, it seems that this Laura is worth befriending. She just returned from Black Mountain Fortress and is already visiting us. Green smiled slightly and said, yes, she's still somewhat conscientious. However, if we want to cooperate with them deeply, we need to take a good look. Zhao Hai nodded and said, yes, that's what I think too. If we want to cooperate with them deeply, we really need to test them well. After all, we have too many things in our hands now, and these things are all enviable. Even if Laura is trustworthy, it's hard to guarantee that the people around her won't be greedy. We still need to be careful. Green nodded, then smiled slightly and said, then should we also prepare to welcome them properly? Zhao Hai smiled slightly and said, yes, we should prepare. Around noon, Laura said in the carriage, sir, how much longer until we reach chaotic Stone Mountain? Sir, riding his horse beside the carriage, immediately said, miss, we're almost there. We can already see chaotic Stone Mountain. However, chaotic Stone Mountain has really changed a lot. Oh? Really? Laura said, opening the front door of the carriage and looking out. Her carriage had 2 doors, one in the front and one in the back. Inside the carriage were 2 rows of benches on the left and right sides. In the middle of the carriage was a small table which was designed as a box underneath, containing some food and drink. Moreover, an ice-type magic array was designed inside this box, which could freeze the things placed inside. The temperature on the upper layer was higher, and the temperature on the lower layer was lower. The benches on both sides of the carriage were also designed as boxes, containing things like quilts. On top of the carriage, there was a magic lamp. On the small table, there was also a magic array that could be used to heat things. It can be said that Laura's carriage was a miniature room. Laura's carriage was actually not small, a full 6 square meters, 3 meters long and 2 meters wide. If you were traveling a long distance, people could completely treat the carriage as a bedroom and have a good night's sleep inside. It was because of this design that the cost of this carriage was very high. The people who could ride in such a carriage were all people with status and position. Laura opened the carriage and saw Chaotic Stone Mountain at a glance. No, strictly speaking, it could no longer be called Chaotic Stone Mountain. The entire Chaotic Stone Mountain was surrounded by a cloud of black mist, making it impossible to see the original appearance of Chaotic Stone Mountain. Laura also understood why Sir said that Chaotic Stone Mountain was very different from before. Laura knew about Chaotic Stone Mountain because of the hot springs there. When that merchant wanted to sell Chaotic Stone Mountain, he said that his mountain had hot springs, where fire-scaled fish could be raised. You must know that fire-scaled fish had always been the most popular thing on the mainland. Laura, as a merchant, would certainly not let go of this opportunity, so she came to Chaotic Stone Mountain to investigate. However, in the end, she found that although fire-scaled fish could be raised here, it did not have the ability to raise them on a large scale, so she gave up. But she had really been to Chaotic Stone Mountain once, and she still remembered the appearance of Chaotic Stone Mountain at that time, but now she couldn't see the shadow of Chaotic Stone Mountain at all, only a cloud of black gas. Kuntz also sat in the carriage. When he saw the appearance of Chaotic Stone Mountain, he couldn't help but smile slightly and said, "What a big deal." He actually used black mist magic to cover the entire mountain. This requires at least a level 6 or higher black magician to do. It seems that this Zhao Hai is really powerful. Although it is said that the strength of a magician is directly proportional to their level, there is a kind of magician that is recognized as the most difficult to deal with on the continent. This kind of magician is the black magician, especially a level 5 or higher black magician. Black magic is too strange. Ordinary black magicians, except when facing light-type magicians, can almost challenge above their level. Therefore, after black magicians pass level 5, not many people are willing to provoke them. Laura smiled slightly and said, "Of course, I think Mr. Zhao Hai's strength is far more than level 6. When he dealt with the undead mercenary group, he summoned more than 1,000 undead creatures at once, and those undead creatures were very powerful. I'm afraid a level 6 magician can't do that, right?" Kuntz nodded and said, "Yes, it seems that his level should be around level 8, otherwise he wouldn't be able to destroy Garen and the others. But speaking of which, where did Garen and the others go? Even if they were destroyed, there should be some news, right?" And there were not only Garen and the others who came to deal with Zhao Hai and the others that time, but also 100 death warriors from the Vansair Principality. Those death warriors are the most difficult to kill. Some of them should have escaped back, right? But until now, no one has returned, and they are nowhere to be seen, dead or alive. Laura said with a solemn face, "Not necessarily. Those death warriors are not easy to kill, but don't forget that Mr. Zhao Hai has more than 1,000 summoned beasts, and these summoned beasts are all undead creatures. Those death warriors can hide from people, but can they hide from the undead creatures' desire for flesh and blood? Moreover, black magicians have another ability, which is to turn the dead into undead creatures. If Mr. Zhao Hai killed Garen and the others and then turned them into undead creatures, then they would not appear again." Kunz's face changed, and then he nodded and said, "This is the most likely possibility. It seems that this Zhao Hai is also a ruthless person. I am even more curious about him now." As they spoke, the carriage had reached the foot of Chaotic Stone Mountain. Just as Laura was about to have the carriage stop, she saw the black mist on the mountain fluctuate, and then a road appeared in front of Laura and the others. In the middle of the road, there was a person standing. This person was covered in armor, and Laura recognized him at a glance as Zhao Hai's follower. Standing in the middle of the road was of course Green. Green was there to meet Laura and the others. Laura and the others' every move since leaving Casa City had not escaped the eyes of the death warriors Zhao Hai sent out, so as soon as Laura and the others moved, Zhao Hai immediately separated the black mist magic on the road. Green stood there and bowed slightly to Laura. "Welcome, Miss Laura." Sir knew that Miss Laura was coming today, so he specifically ordered me to greet you here. Miss Laura, please. After he finished speaking, a heteromorph appeared from the black mist beside the road, and Green jumped onto the heteromorph's head. The heteromorph's huge body turned nimbly and walked straight up the mountain. Laura was stunned by Green, but when she saw Green walking up the mountain, she didn't say anything and directly let the coachman drive the carriage to follow behind Green. Kunt sat in the carriage, but his face was not very good looking. He looked at Green walking in front and said to Laura in a deep voice, "Laura, this Zhao Hai is not simple. It seems that Garen and the others were really destroyed. He knows our whereabouts like the back of his hand. It seems that they knew in advance that Garen was coming to attack them. As long as they set up an ambush, then Garen and the others would not be able to escape." Laura nodded and said, "Yes, I really didn't expect Mr. Zhao Hai to be so powerful. Haha, but the more powerful he is, the better. What we need is a powerful ally." Kunt said with a solemn face, murmuring, "It's not necessarily a good thing for an ally to be too powerful." Chapter 117. Too much surprise. Laura's carriage was in front, and the road behind them was constantly shrouded in black mist, making it look like a giant beast, constantly swallowing the road bit by bit, which made Laura and the others unconsciously speed up. Soon Laura and the others saw the Kingstone Manor on the top of the mountain. They had seen it last time they came. Because no one had managed it for a long time, the manor looked very dilapidated. They thought that after Zhao Hai and the others moved in, the manor would be renovated. But what they didn't expect was that the manor had not been renovated, but simply maintained. From the outside, it still looked very old. At this time, the gate of the manor had been opened. On both sides of the gate of the manor, there were 2 rows of humanoid undead creatures. These humanoid undead creatures were all dark green, as if they were carved from black jade. Standing there, although a little scary, they were far from terrifying. On the contrary, those undead creatures were like works of art. The number of these 2 rows of undead creatures added up to nearly 100. Each of them was wearing clothes. These clothes were not ordinary warrior clothes, but some armor that mercenaries often wore, with weapons on their backs. As soon as they saw the attire of these undead creatures, Laura and Kunjang couldn't help but look at each other and saw a hint of understanding in each other's eyes. They knew about the fact that Garen and the others had led mercenaries to deal with Zhao Hai some time ago, and Laura also clearly remembered that the first time Zhao Hai saved her, there were not many humanoid undead creatures among Zhao Hai's summoned creatures. Now that so many humanoid undead creatures suddenly appeared, coupled with their attire, they naturally associated them with Garen's attack some time ago. At this time, Green had already entered the courtyard on the back of a heteromorph. Laura's carriage also entered the courtyard. When they arrived in the courtyard, Green jumped off the back of the heteromorph. The heteromorph turned around and lay down by the wall. Laura and the others also stopped the car. Green stood next to the carriage and bowed to Laura, saying, "Miss Laura, please, Sir is waiting for you in the living room." After speaking, he turned his body to the side and made a gesture of invitation. Laura nodded and led Near and Kunjang towards the courtyard. Green then turned to Laura and said, "Miss Laura, please let your men go with him to rest." After speaking, he pointed to an undead creature next to him, and the undead creature immediately bowed to Laura. Laura and Kunjang were both stunned. It wasn't that they were ignorant, on the contrary, they could be said to be very knowledgeable, but they had never seen an undead creature as intelligent as this one. Although they were surprised, Laura and Kunjang didn't show too much. Kunjang turned to Sir and said, "Sir, go and rest with them." Sir nodded and led his men away with the undead creature. Green led the 3 of them into the courtyard. Laura and the others secretly looked at everything in the courtyard. This courtyard had obviously been renovated, but the movements were not very big. The only difference from before was that there was a little more life in this courtyard. The 4 of them passed through the front living room and came to the backyard. As soon as they arrived in the backyard, Laura and Kunjang's eyes widened, because they saw the hot spring ditch in the backyard. Of course, there was nothing noteworthy about the hot spring ditch. They had already noticed it last time they came, but this time the reason why they noticed the hot spring ditch was not because of the hot spring ditch itself, but because of the things in the hot spring ditch. The fire ding fish. Dense and countless fire ding fish crowded the hot spring ditch. The scene made Laura and Kunjang stunned. They were very clear about the situation in Luin Stone Mountain. The hot spring ditch here was not suitable for raising fire ding fish, but now what was going on with these fire ding fish? Not only were they living well, but they were also much bigger than ordinary fire ding fish. What was going on? As soon as Green saw the 2 of them stop, he knew what they were there for. He couldn't help but smile slightly. They did it on purpose. If they didn't do it on purpose, Laura and Kunjang would not be able to see those fire ding fish. They wanted Laura and Kunjing to see these fire-ding fish so that they could talk about cooperation. Green turned to the three of them and said, "Miss Laura, please, sir is waiting for you inside." Laura was stunned and immediately came back to her senses. She pointed to the fire-ding fish in the hot spring ditch and stammered, "What's going on?" Green smiled slightly and said, "This is raised by my master, 3, please come in." After speaking, he took the lead and walked towards the reception room in the backyard. When Laura saw that Green didn't want to say anything, she didn't ask any more questions. She exchanged a surprised look with Kunjing and followed Green to the reception room. Zhao Hai and Meg were already standing in front of the reception room waiting for Laura and the others. As soon as they saw Laura coming over, Zhao Hai smiled slightly and said, "Welcome, Miss Laura. I didn't expect Miss Laura to come to see me today after just returning yesterday." "I'm really honored." Laura quickly bowed to Zhao Hai and said, "Laura has met Mr. Zhao Hai. Compared with Mr. Life-Saving Grace, what is this?" Laura is very happy to hear that Mr. is settling here. It is really abrupt to come and disturb you today. Zhao Hai smiled slightly and said, "Miss Laura is too polite, please come in." After speaking, he turned and entered the living room. After entering the living room and sitting down, Meg immediately and silently took a pot of cocoa and poured a cup for each of them, but at this time Laura did not pay attention to cocoa, but noticed the demon sealing iron scroll in Meg's hand. Laura and Kunjing were both knowledgeable people, and they could naturally recognize the demon sealing iron scroll at a glance, but they did not expect that a servant of Zhao Hai would be holding a demon sealing iron scroll. Zhao Hai noticed the eyes of the two, but he did not say anything, just calmly said, "Small place, there is nothing to entertain. Please try this cocoa." The two immediately came back to their senses, and politely picked up the cup and took a sip. Zhao Hai glanced at Kunjing and said, "Miss Laura, who is this?" Laura immediately said, "Excuse me, this is my butler and also my respected elder, Grandpa Kunjing." Kunjing immediately stood up and bowed to Zhao Hai and said, "Kunjing has met Mr. Zhao Hai, thank you Mr. for saving my lady." Zhao Hai smiled slightly and said, "It's just a small effort, not worth mentioning, Mr. Kunjing, please sit down." Kunjing sat down as he said. Laura looked at Zhao Hai and said, "Laura has a question, I don't know if I should ask it or not." Zhao Hai said, "Miss Laura, please ask." Laura looked at Meg and said, "The one held by Mr. Maid should be a demon sealing iron scroll, right? I wonder where Mr. got it from?" Zhao Hai smiled slightly and said, "It's nothing. A few days ago there were a few ignorant little thieves who wanted to come here to make trouble. After I cleaned them up, I got this demon sealing iron scroll. This thing is useless to me, so I rewarded it to my maid." Laura and Kunjing were both stunned. Only then did they carefully look at Meg. The two of them could be considered experts. This attention revealed that Meg actually had a very strong magic fluctuation, and that magic fluctuation seemed to be no less than the level of a 5th level mage. Laura and Kunjing couldn't help but look at each other in surprise. From today when they arrived at King's Stone Manor, this manor gave them too many surprises. The black magic that covered the entire mountain, the undead creatures that could understand human speech and were very polite, the countless fire-ding fish, and a maid who was a 5th level mage. All of this made them feel very surprised. Laura and Kunjing both saw a hint of shock in each other's eyes. After a while, Kunjing took a deep breath, turned to Zhao Hai and said, "May I ask Mr. Zhao Hai, what happened to those who attacked you?" Zhao Hai smiled and said, "Didn't you just see them? He has become my servant." Although they had thought of this point long ago, they were still very surprised to hear Zhao Hai tell them clearly. Kunjing stared at Zhao Hai and said, "May I ask Mr. has that light magic mage also become your servant?" Kunjing was knowledgeable and naturally knew that it was very difficult for a light magic mage to become an undead creature. Even if he did, he could only become the lowest level of undead creature, and there was a high probability of failure. Could it be that Zhao Hai also turned Garen, the 8th level light magic mage, into an undead creature? If Garen had not become an undead creature, how could his demon sealing iron scroll be in Zhao Hai's hands? Garen was still very famous on the continent. He was an 8th level light magic mage, which made him very famous in himself, and the most famous thing about him was another point, that is, he specialized in targeting black magic mages. As long as he heard that there was a black magic mage there, he would definitely go to challenge him, and as long as he fought against him, it was difficult for the black magic mage to have a chance to survive. Therefore, Garen had another name besides his title of light magic mage, black magic mage killer. The reason why Garen was able to defeat so many black magic mages, in addition to being an 8th level light magic mage, was also because he had a demon sealing iron scroll. His demon sealing iron scroll was sealed with all light magic, which was very advantageous in battle. Many black magic mages died under his demon sealing iron scroll. When Zhao Hai heard Kun Jing say this, he smiled slightly, turned to Green and said, "Go and call Zhao Garen here." Green responded and turned to walk out. Laura and Kun Jing looked at Zhao Hai in confusion. Zhao Hai smiled slightly and did not say anything, just picked up his cup of cocoa and took a sip. After a while, a sound of footsteps came, and Green walked in from the outside, followed by an undead creature behind him. When they saw this undead creature, Kun Jing and Laura were stunned. Chapter 118 Special Dishes. Laura and Kun Jing had seen many undead creatures, but they had never seen such a peculiar one before. This was a humanoid undead creature with a white, almost transparent skeleton, wearing a white, ornate magic robe and holding a white magic staff. Anyone with even a basic understanding of mages could immediately recognize the style of the robe and staff as belonging to a light magic user. A white skeleton wouldn't normally be noteworthy, but this white was not a pale color. Instead, it shimmered with a psychic light, which made it remarkable. Good heavens, how could an undead creature exude a psychic aura? Was the world turning upside down? Had the gods moved to hell? Laura and Kun Jing stared dumbfounded at the skeleton behind Green. They truly didn't know what adjectives to use to describe it. The feeling it gave was simply too bizarre. Zhao Hai glanced at their expressions, then at Nier, the petite maid standing behind Laura. She was easily overlooked, but Zhao Hai didn't neglect her because he himself was someone easily overlooked, so he never disregarded anyone. Nier's expression was different from Laura's and Kun Jing's. They were shocked, but Nier looked merely curious without any surprise. Zhao Hai couldn't help but become interested in Nier. He found this little girl truly fascinating. Her eyes were so pure, clearly reflecting her thoughts, like a piece of clear crystal. Zhao Hai had never seen a girl with such pure eyes before. Even Meg sometimes had a mischievous glint in her eyes, far from Nier's purity, which seemed to purify the soul. However, Zhao Hai quickly regained his composure, smiled slightly, and said to Zhao Jia, greet Miss Laura and Mr. Kun Jing. Zhao Jia performed a very proper noble salute. As he did so, Laura and Kun Jing momentarily forgot his undead status, thinking they were facing a refined gentleman, and they hurriedly returned the greeting. Only after the salute did they realize they were facing an undead creature, and they stood there somewhat awkwardly. Zhao Hai smiled and said, "Please, sit down. It's all right. This fellow's salute is more standard than mine. Haha, I'm embarrassed to perform a noble salute in front of him." Hearing Zhao Hai's words, Laura and Kun Jing chuckled and sat down. As soon as they were seated, Laura asked curiously, "Mr. Zhao Hai, do you mean that this undead creature is Jialan?" Zhao Hai smiled and said, "There will be no more Jialan in the world, only Zhao Jia." "Alright, Zhao Jia, you may leave." Zhao Jia bowed to Zhao Hai and turned to leave. Laura watched Zhao Jia's departing figure, sighed, and turned to Zhao Hai, "Mr. Zhao Hai, what level of undead creature is Zhao Jia now?" Zhao Hai thought for a moment and said, "Maybe level 7? I'm not too sure." Laura and Kun Jing exchanged glances, both seeing a hint of shock in each other's eyes. They were well aware of how difficult it was for a black mage to transform a dead person into a high-level undead creature. Kun Jing quickly said, "Mr. Zhao Hai, does Zhao Jia retain his memories from when he was alive?" Zhao Hai shook his head. "No, he doesn't. In the beginning, he was just an ordinary level 1 undead creature. Later, I used a secret method to raise his level. Although he's an undead creature now, he can still use light magic, and at a high level." Laura and Kun Jing were petrified once more. They really couldn't understand why an undead creature could use light magic. They really wanted to know what kind of secret method Zhao Hai was talking about. Both of them were well aware that black mages had been trying to find ways to turn their low-level undead creatures into high-level ones, but after so many years of research, there had been no progress. If they knew that Zhao Hai had this method, they would go crazy. The two looked at Zhao Hai, wondering why he would reveal this in front of them. As they looked at Zhao Hai, they noticed that Zhao Hai, Green, and Meg were all staring at them intently. Although Zhao Hai's face was hidden behind a black veil, they seemed to still feel the cold glint in his eyes behind the veil. A chill ran through their hearts. At the same time, Kun Jing noticed that the person in full armor who had been leading them was actually a powerful level 8 peak warrior, which made Kun Jing even more highly estimate Zhao Hai's identity. Seeing that Laura hadn't reacted yet, Kun Jing quickly said, "Please rest assured, sir. We will absolutely not reveal what we have seen here. I guarantee it on the honor of the Magical family." Hearing Kun Jing say this, Laura quickly nodded in agreement. Zhao Hai smiled slightly and said, "You two don't need to make such vows. To be honest, although I can raise the levels of these undead creatures, there is a prerequisite. After I raise their levels, they will only recognize me as their master and cannot be changed. Moreover, this method cannot be learned by others. Laura and Kunjing certainly didn't believe Zhao Hai's words, but they still nodded. Laura then waved to Nier, who quickly walked out. Laura turned to Zhao Hai and said, "I'm really sorry to disturb you today. I didn't have much time to prepare, so I only prepared 2 small gifts, and I hope you'll accept them." As she spoke, Nier came back in, holding a long box with a black magic robe on top. Laura stood up, picked up the magic robe, and smiled at Zhao Hai. "Sir, you are a black mage. This moonlit night magic robe is a decent piece of magic equipment that I received before, and I'm giving it to you today." With that, she held the magic robe in front of Zhao Hai. Zhao Hai stood up, took the seemingly good magic robe, and nodded. "Then thank you, Miss Laura. I won't be polite." After taking the moonlit night magic robe, Zhao Hai handed it to Green, who held it in his hands. Seeing that Zhao Hai had accepted the magic robe, Laura couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Then she turned around and took the long box from Nier, gently opened it, and inside was the spirit wind magic staff. Laura said to Zhao Hai, "This is a wind attribute magic staff, but because it has been soaked in the blood of wind attribute magic beasts, it also has some enhancing effect on black magic. I hope you won't dislike it." Zhao Hai laughed loudly and said, "Miss Laura, you are very kind. To be honest, this staff that you sent isn't suitable for me, but my mate is a wind attribute mage. I have been looking for a suitable magic staff for her. Miss Laura, you are truly a lifesaver. I thank you here." After saying that, he picked up the spirit wind magic staff and handed it to Meg. Laura didn't expect Zhao Hai to give the magic staff to Meg directly, but she didn't say anything. After all, Zhao Hai had already accepted her magic staff, so the magic staff belonged to Zhao Hai and it was none of her business who he gave it to. Meg happily took the spirit wind magic staff and said to Zhao Hai, "Thank you, young master." This time she didn't call him sir, but young master. Anyway, Laura and Kunjing should be able to tell that Zhao Hai wasn't old, so calling him sir or young master didn't matter. Zhao Hai nodded, asked Laura to sit down, and said with a smile, "Miss Laura has given me these 2 good things, so I certainly can't be too stingy. Lunch has been prepared in the dining room. Please, Miss Laura, Mr. Kunjing, and this young lady do me the honor of joining me." After saying that, he stood up and gestured outwards with his hand. Laura and Kunjing didn't stand on ceremony, but stood up and followed Zhao Hai out. Soon, they arrived at the dining room. The dining room was very large, and Merlin was busy inside, preparing the food. Seeing Zhao Hai leading Laura and the others in, Merlin smiled and said, "Young master, the food is ready. Please sit down." Zhao Hai nodded and said to Laura, "Miss Laura, Mr. Kunjing, and this young lady, please sit down. We don't have as many rules as those great nobles. Every time we eat, we all sit together. Please." Laura and Kunjing were curious about Zhao Hai's approach, but they didn't say anything directly. They thanked him and sat down, and Nier followed suit. Seeing that everyone had sat down, Merlin and Meg brought the dishes up. Today's meal was very rich, with braised rabbit meat, fire scale fish, and several earth vegetables produced in the space. Merlin had prepared them all. This was something that Zhao Hai and the others had discussed beforehand. They wanted to use this meal to let Laura and the others know the taste of these vegetables, so that they could cooperate with them in the future. Laura and Kunjing also noticed the dishes on the table. Besides the roasted rabbit meat, fire scale fish, and a magic radish, they didn't recognize what vegetables the other dishes were made of. Laura wasn't one of those pampered young masters who couldn't distinguish between grains. She herself bought daily necessities and she was very familiar with the daily vegetables. But what surprised her was that she had never seen most of the dishes on the table, and the cooking methods were also very special. Soon all the dishes were served. The dishes were very special, and the rice was just ordinary flatbread. Laura didn't pay much attention to the flatbread, but carefully looked at the dishes on the table and found that she really didn't recognize many of them. Then she turned to look at Kunjing. Kunjing also frowned as he looked at the dishes on the table. To be honest, he was considered well-informed, but he had never seen the dishes on the table. Seeing that Laura was looking at him, he couldn't help but shake his head slightly. Chapter 119 Talking about Cooperation 1. Of course, Laura understood what Kunjing shaking his head meant, which indicated that he had never seen such dishes before, further piquing her curiosity. Seeing Laura's expression, Zhao Hai smiled slightly and said, "Come, Miss Laura, Mr. Kunjing, and this should be Miss Nier, right? Please try these. They are our specialties and can't be found anywhere else." Laura smiled slightly and said, "Then we won't be polite. To be honest, this is the first time I've seen such large fire dingfish." Kunjing smiled slightly and said, "Fire dingfish is the young lady's favorite. I didn't expect to find it here." Zhao Hai seems to have a lot of experience in raising fire dingfish. Testing. Everyone knew that Kunjang was testing him, but Zhao Hai wasn't angry. He was waiting for this kind of probing. So, he just smiled slightly and said, "It's alright. I chose this place because I liked the hot springs. I like soaking in them, so I settled down. Raising fire ding fish was an afterthought. Luckily, I had something that fire ding fish could eat, so I raised some. Hee, but the environment here is what it is, so I can't raise too many." Not raising many? When Kunjang and Laura heard Zhao Hai say this, they couldn't help but think of the densely packed fire ding fish heads they saw in Wenner Gully, and they felt like fainting. This was excessive modesty, bordering on hypocrisy. However, Kunjang then frowned and said, "Mr. Zhao Hai, may I be so bold as to ask, even if you have something that fire ding fish can eat, where did you get these fire ding fish? I remember when I came to Luanxi Mountain before, there were only a few small fire ding fish in the hot springs. Now there are so many all of a sudden, and you haven't been here long enough to raise them yourself, right?" When Laura heard Kunjang ask this, she immediately perked up. She knew that Kunjang had hit the nail on the head. Zhao Hai had only been in Luanxi Mountain for a short time, so it was impossible for him to raise so many fire ding fish. Then he must have moved the fire ding fish from somewhere else. Where did he move them from? Perhaps his answer could reveal something about his background. Zhao Hai glanced at Kunjang, shook his head, and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Kunjang, this is a secret." Zhao Hai didn't say much, just plainly refused, telling him, "This is a secret, I won't tell you, so don't ask." Kunjang and Laura were both stunned. Kunjang immediately said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Zhao Hai, I was rude." Zhao Hai waved his hand, smiled slightly, and said, "It's nothing, come and try the dishes, don't let them get cold." Laura and Kunjang didn't stand on ceremony, picked up their knives and forks, and tasted the dishes on the table. They were native Ark continent people, and people on Ark continent used knives and forks when eating. Zhao Hai had never seen anyone use chopsticks. However, Zhao Hai was using chopsticks now. He really wasn't used to knives and forks, so when Merlin learned some Chinese dishes, Zhao Hai switched to chopsticks. Although Green and the others found it strange, they didn't say anything. If it were before, Green would have said that Zhao Hai was acting too strangely and didn't look like a noble at all. However, since Zhao Hai obtained the space, Green rarely said anything to him. Anyway, in a place like Black Soil Wilderness, even if you acted like a noble, no one would see it. And if Zhao Hai acted too much like a noble outside of Black Soil Wilderness, it wouldn't be good, and it would be easy for people to find out his identity. Zhao Hai was now a black magician, and black magicians had always been a very special profession on the continent. In everyone's impression, black magicians were all people with quirks. If a black magician was too normal, no one would believe he was a black magician. Laura and the others also noticed Zhao Hai's chopsticks. These chopsticks were made by Zhao Hai himself, using a long branch of an oil fruit tree, which he shaped with a knife and then polished. The brown-red wood grain and the shiny color were very beautiful. Zhao Hai didn't take off his veil. The design of this magic robe was very interesting. The size of the veil could be adjusted. As long as you weren't afraid of trouble, you could completely make the veil bigger and eat with the veil on. However, most magicians wouldn't do this now, it was too troublesome. Laura and Kunjang looked at Zhao Hai in confusion, wondering why Zhao Hai was eating like this. Zhao Hai glanced at the two of them and chuckled, "I'm sorry, both of you, I don't want others to see my face for some special reasons." This explanation was worse than no explanation. If Zhao Hai didn't explain, Laura and Kunjang might have just thought this was another quirk of Zhao Hai's. But with Zhao Hai's explanation, Laura and the others couldn't help but overthink. Why didn't Zhao Hai want others to see his face? Was it because he was too ugly? Was it because he was afraid of being recognized? Or was it because he was an unwanted criminal of the empire? However, Zhao Hai didn't explain further. He had only just met Laura today, and he knew that people rarely talked while eating, so Zhao Hai and the others didn't say anything, but just lowered their heads and ate. Since Zhao Hai and the others weren't talking, Laura and Kunjang couldn't say anything either, so they had to eat in silence. But they quickly stopped feeling bored because the food was really too delicious. A cooking method they had never seen before, completely different from that of Ark Continent, coupled with dishes they had never eaten before, made Laura and Kunjang's appetite soar. Laura wasn't a gluttonous person. On the contrary, she had very high requirements for food, both in terms of cooking techniques and ingredients. The Majdal family itself sold vegetables and grains, so they naturally knew how to judge the quality of vegetables. And the Majdal family's biggest customers weren't ordinary civilians, as they couldn't earn much money from them. Their biggest customers were the major nobles. The things for the nobles couldn't be too bad, of course. Not only did the vegetables have to look good, but the most important thing was that the taste had to be good. Therefore, when Laura was doing business with those vegetable merchants, she would generally taste the dishes herself, which also made her palate picky. People are animals that love to enjoy, no matter which plane they are on. Although the cooking methods on Ark continent are not worth mentioning, they have very high requirements for ingredients. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a distinction between magic vegetables and ordinary vegetables. In addition to increasing magic power, magic vegetables also taste better than ordinary vegetables. Laura's family mainly deals in magic vegetables, so they naturally pay more attention to taste. Because of this, Laura was interested in the dishes on the table, because the dishes on the table really tasted too good. It wasn't just that the cooking method was good, but the most important thing was that the quality of the dishes was too good. In the beginning, Laura didn't use the dish made with radishes. In Laura's opinion, mo-laifu was the lowest grade magic vegetable and she had no interest in eating it. However, out of politeness, she still took a bite, and this bite was extraordinary. She found that this was the most delicious mo-laifu she had ever eaten. Not only was the taste pure, but it was also crisp and refreshing, simply superb. Laura couldn't help but be stunned, but she didn't say anything. Then she tasted the other dishes, and each one was delicious. The most important thing was the fire ding fish, which was more delicious than any fire ding fish she had ever eaten. Laura couldn't help but eat 2 more bites. This meal ended in a very strange atmosphere. It wasn't that the atmosphere of this meal was bad. On the contrary, the atmosphere of this meal was really good. It could be said that the host and guests were happy. But the strange thing was that this meal had the fewest words. After the meal, Zhao Hai and the others returned to the living room. Merlin and Meg brought Kia to the others again. Zhao Hai then said to Laura, "Miss Laura, actually, if you didn't come to see me, I would have gone to see you." Laura was stunned. She didn't expect Zhao Hai to say this. She quickly said, "Is there anything I can do for Mr. Zhao Hai?" Zhao Hai smiled slightly and said, "There's nothing major. Miss Laura has also seen that I don't like being restrained. In addition, I'm a black magician, so no family has invited me yet. I have to earn all my expenses myself. I'm looking for Miss Laura for this matter." Laura was stunned, not quite understanding what Zhao Hai meant. Although she had only been in contact with Zhao Hai for a short time, she had also found that Zhao Hai was a somewhat arrogant person. His arrogance wasn't on the surface, but was the kind that was deeply ingrained in his bones. He didn't have arrogance, but he had integrity. Such a person wouldn't ask her for money. Then there was only one way for him to solve the money problem: by finding her. Thinking of this, Laura's eyes couldn't help but light up because she immediately thought of the fire ding fish in the hot spring gully outside. Laura looked at Zhao Hai and said, "What does the gentleman mean?" She was still a little unsure of Zhao Hai's thoughts, so she wanted to ask. Zhao Hai smiled slightly and said, "I have something I want to cooperate with Miss Laura on. I wonder if Miss Laura is willing?" Laura's eyes lit up and said, "Is the gentleman talking about those fire ding fish?" Zhao Hai smiled slightly and said, "There are still too few fire ding fish now. I can only sell Miss Laura 100 a month. I'm talking about another business, which is mo-laifu." Laura was stunned and said, "Mo-laifu? Does the gentleman have a large amount of mo-laifu to sell?" "That's no problem, our magical chamber of commerce can handle it." It made sense for Laura to say this. Mo-laifu itself wasn't a valuable thing. If it wasn't for a large amount of mo-laifu to sell, Zhao Hai wouldn't have looked for her. Zhao Hai smiled slightly and said, "Miss Laura, don't say that yet. I want to know how much mo-laifu you can handle in a month, and my mo-laifu is of this quality. You just tasted the taste." As he spoke, he took out a white radish and put it on the table. Chapter 120. Talking about cooperation 2. Laura turned her gaze to the white radish, and her eyes couldn't help but narrow. Laura had seen countless white radishes, but this was the first time she had seen one of such high quality. Kunjing also stared intently at the white radish, but he paid even more attention to Zhao Hai. Just now, Zhao Hai simply moved his hand and a white radish appeared. What did this represent? It meant that Zhao Hai possessed a spatial storage device. Spatial storage devices, those were not something ordinary people could possess. Currently, only some large forces on the continent had some spatial storage devices. The Majtel family only had one spatial storage device, a spatial bag, which was always carried by the Majtel family's patriarch. It was said to have 100 cubic meters of space inside, which was considered a large spatial storage device on the continent. Spatial storage devices represented more than just an equipment. They were also a symbol of status and strength. Without a superior status, you couldn't obtain a spatial storage device. Without great strength, even if you obtained one, you wouldn't have the life to use it. Therefore, Kunjing couldn't help but be shocked when he saw Zhao Hai take out the radish. Discovering that Zhao Hai might have a spatial storage device, Kunjing became even more certain of Zhao Hai's identity. He believed that Zhao Hai must be a representative of an underground power, otherwise he wouldn't have a spatial storage device, nor could he have obtained so many fire-scale fish in such a short time. At the same time, Kunjang was even more determined to cooperate with Zhao Hai. Kunjang was very clear about their current situation. Although they were members of the Machtel family, and Karen was even the second heir to the Machtel family, their current situation was not good. The Machtel family was too large, and Karen had never cultivated his own power before, so he was the weakest in the Machtel family. They now needed a strong ally. Laura picked up the radish on the table, examined it carefully, and then put it down. She looked up at Zhao Hai and said, "Are all the magic radishes in your possession of this quality, sir?" Zhao Hai smiled slightly and said, "They are all the same, even the size is the same. Please rest assured, Miss Laura. I want to cooperate with you for the long term, not just for a one-time deal." Laura suddenly stood up and bowed to Zhao Hai, saying, "Laura thanks you for your trust. Laura has a proposal. Please become a formal ally of our Machtel family." "I wonder what you think, sir." Zhao Hai quickly stood up and helped Laura up, saying, "Miss Laura, there's no need to be so polite. It's impossible to ally with the Machtel family, but I am interested in allying with you, Miss Laura. I wonder what you think." Laura and Kunjang were stunned when they heard Zhao Hai say this. Just now, Laura said she wanted Zhao Hai to ally with the Machtel family, but she didn't say she wanted to ally with herself because she was afraid that Zhao Hai would dislike her business being too small. However, she didn't expect Zhao Hai to take the initiative to propose an alliance with her instead of the Machtel family. This made Laura and Kunjang very happy, but at the same time, a sense of doubt arose in their hearts. They had both seen the radish on the table, and the quality could be said to be top-notch. No matter who they cooperated with, the other party would give him the best terms. So why would Zhao Hai choose them? Laura stared at Zhao Hai and said calmly, "Why do you want to ally with me, sir? You should know that if you ally with the Machtel Merchant Guild, you will receive greater benefits." Zhao Hai smiled slightly and said, "Miss Laura, business is about familiarity, not unfamiliarity. I know Miss Laura, but I don't know the people of the Machtel family. Besides, I've also heard a saying, large stores bully customers. Although I don't have many good things, I don't have few either. I don't feel comfortable cooperating with the Machtel family." Hearing Zhao Hai say this, and thinking about the densely packed fire-scale fish outside, Laura and Kunjang understood. Although those fire-scale fish represented gold coins, they were also the root of trouble. If Zhao Hai had sought cooperation with a large family from the start, he might have been swallowed whole. Having understood this, Laura couldn't help but say, "All right, then I won't be polite. From today onwards, I, Laura, will be your most steadfast ally, Mr. Zhao Hai. Please believe in Laura." Zhao Hai smiled slightly and said, "If I didn't believe in you, Miss Laura, I wouldn't be discussing cooperation with you today. Now, please give me a definite number. How many magic radishes can you take in a month?" Laura sat there and calculated for a moment, then said in a deep voice, "Not much is needed now. We already have suppliers in our store, and we have been cooperating with them for a long time. Even if we want to purchase from you, sir, we need to make preparations in advance. If you agree, sir, I will send someone to pick up 10,000 pounds in 3 days. I wonder what you think." 10,000 pounds. Zhao Hai frowned. This number was too small, far from his original plan. When Laura saw Zhao Hai frowning, she thought he didn't have that many radishes and quickly said, "What's wrong? Do you have any difficulties, sir? If the quantity is too large, then just take as much as you have." Zhao Hai smiled bitterly and waved his hand, saying, "You're overthinking it, Miss Laura. It's not that I think the quantity is too large, but too small. I want to know how many magic radishes your stores in the Versailles duchy can sell in a month." Laura was stunned, and a glint flashed in her eyes. She quickly said, "Currently, my stores in the Versailles duchy can sell about 400,000 pounds of magic radishes a month. If your magic radishes are all of this quality, sir, I can purchase them at a price of 60 copper coins per pound. I wonder if you are satisfied with this price, sir?" Zhao Hai nodded and said, "Very satisfied." "Then it's settled. I can reveal a secret to you, Miss Laura. If you only need 400,000 pounds of magic radishes a month, I can fully supply that amount, and the quality will be the same as this sample. No matter when you come to pick them up, there will be stock available." Laura and Kunjing were both delighted when they heard Zhao Hai say this. Laura quickly said, "Are you not joking, sir? 400,000 pounds a month is not a small amount. Can you really provide that much?" Zhao Hai smiled slightly and said, "Rest assured, Miss Laura. I said that we are going to cooperate for the long term, so I naturally won't deceive you. 400,000 pounds a month, available at any time. The price will be as you said, Miss Laura." Laura said excitedly, "All right, then it's settled. I will send someone to pick up 10,000 pounds in 3 days and send the payment to you, sir." Zhao Hai smiled and said, "That's not urgent. Actually, I have another business I want to do with you, Miss Laura. Do you also sell fruit oil?" Laura was stunned and nodded, sighing, "Of course. Fruit oil is the most common commodity on the continent, and the demand is extremely high. Although the profit per pound is not much, the overall profit is not small. Do you have fruit oil in your possession, sir?" Zhao Hai shook his head and said, "Not for the time being. This time, I want to ask you for a favor, Miss Laura. When you come to pick up the magic radishes, can you exchange the payment for oil presses? I have a large number of oil fruits, but these oil fruits have not yet been pressed into fruit oil." Laura and Kunjang exchanged glances, and they both saw confusion in each other's eyes. It should be known that very few people on the continent specialize in planting oil fruit trees or rice bamboo. Even in the main producing areas of oil fruits, most of them are wild, or some oil fruit trees are planted on poor land. These places are generally controlled by some small nobles because large nobles would not do this kind of business, as the profits are too small. But now Zhao Hai said that he had a large number of oil fruits. Could it be that he was a small noble? That's not right. If he were a small noble, he wouldn't have a spatial storage device. What exactly was going on? Zhao Hai looked at the two and said, "What's wrong? Is there any difficulty, Miss Laura?" Laura was startled and came back to her senses, quickly saying, "There is no difficulty, I just don't know what kind of oil press you need, sir. Is it wind-powered, water-powered, or animal-powered?" Zhao Hai was stunned. He really didn't expect that there were so many types of oil presses. He quickly said, "What's the difference?" Laura smiled slightly and said, "There is a big difference. If the place where you press oil is very spacious, it is best to use wind power. If you are near a river, it is best to use water power. If you have neither, you can only use animal power." Zhao Hai nodded, thinking about Iron Mountain Fort. Undoubtedly, wind power and water power could be used there. The black soil wasteland was very empty and the wind was not small, so a wind-powered oil press would be very suitable. And the water in the moat was flowing, so a water-powered one would also work. Animal power was not a problem either. Now he had so many undead creatures, he could completely let these tireless guys push those machines. It seemed that all three were good choices. But then, Zhao Hai rejected the wind-powered and water-powered oil presses. It was not safe at Iron Mountain Fort now. A beast tide might break out at any time. Although Zhao Zui and the others had gone to the swamp to capture magical beasts and undead creatures, there was no progress now. If a beast tide broke out again, Iron Mountain Fort would still have no defense capabilities. Even if wind-powered and water-powered oil presses were built, they would be destroyed. Having understood this, Zhao Hai turned to Laura and said, "How much do you know about these three types of oil presses, Miss Laura? I wonder what the quality of the animal-powered oil press is like. Is it easy to transport?" This time, Laura did not speak, but turned to look at Kunjang. Obviously, Kunjang had more to say about these things than her. Kunjang was not polite and said, "Among these three types of oil presses, the water-powered one is actually the best, with the largest daily oil yield. The wind-powered one is a little worse, and the animal-powered one is the worst. However, water-powered and wind-powered oil presses are very large and not suitable for transportation, while the animal-powered one is small and only requires a room to press oil, making it very suitable for transportation." Chapter 121 Talking about Cooperation 3 Zhao Hai nodded and said, "Mr. Kunjang, do you know how much oil can be produced by this kind of animal-powered oil press in a day?" Kunjang said, "Generally, one machine can produce about 1,000 katas of oil a day. Of course, this yield can only be achieved with non-stop production day and night." Zhao Hai nodded and said, "The oil yield is not low. I wonder what the price of this oil press is." Kunjang said, "The price is not expensive, 100 gold coins per machine. The main function of this oil press is to extract fruit oil, and fruit oil is very cheap. If it's too expensive, no one will buy it." Zhao Hai nodded and turned to Laura. "Miss Laura, please bring me 5 animal-powered oil presses when you come to pick up the magic radishes next time. Is that convenient?" Laura quickly nodded and said, "Convenient. What trouble is there? Please rest assured, sir. I will definitely have them delivered to you. Consider these 5 machines as a gift from me to you." Zhao Hai smiled slightly and said, "Miss Laura is too kind. Now that we are allies and in a cooperative relationship, the accounts must be clear. The money for the 5 oil presses will be deducted from the payment for the magic radishes. If I really need Miss Laura's help in the future, I will definitely not be polite." When Laura heard Zhao Hai say this, she couldn't say anything more and had to nod. "All right, please rest assured, sir. The items will be delivered on time in 3 days." Zhao Hai smiled slightly and turned to Green. "Go and have them prepare a few firefin fish for Miss Laura, as a gift from me to Miss Laura." He then turned to Laura and said, I see that Miss Laura seems to like firefin fish very much. There aren't many of these fish that have fully grown yet, so I'll send Miss Laura a few. I hope you don't mind. Laura didn't decline. A few firefin fish weren't worth much money. Being too polite would seem too insincere. She smiled and said, then thank you, sir. To be honest, I really like to eat firefin fish. I'm in for a treat this time. Zhao Hai smiled slightly and continued, by the way, Miss Laura, I also want to ask you something. Do you have any sales channels for blue-eyed rabbits? Laura was stunned, but she immediately remembered that Zhao Hai had bought 300 blue-eyed rabbits some time ago. Asking this now clearly meant that he wanted to raise rabbits, but Laura really didn't have much contact with blue-eyed rabbits. Thinking of this, Laura couldn't help but frown and said, we really haven't done business with blue-eyed rabbits, but we do have some business dealings with several meat processing factories and can ask them for you, sir. Zhao Hai nodded and said, then I'll have to trouble Miss Laura. I plan to set up a breeding farm to raise some animals that ordinary people can afford to eat, such as blue-eyed rabbits, long-haired pigs, and scaleless fish. Now I already have breeding rabbits for blue-eyed rabbits, but I don't have seedlings for long-haired pigs and scaleless fish yet. I'll also have to ask Miss Laura to pay more attention to this. Laura nodded and said, that's not a problem. I'll tell you as soon as I have any news, sir. If you want to run so many different things, it seems that our Magical Merchant Guild will also have to add some projects. There are many meat processing factories in Arc Continent. These factories make things like fire legs or things similar to canned goods. The price of fire legs is not very expensive, but some special fire legs can only be afforded by nobles. Canned goods are generally eaten by commoners or directly supplied to the army, and the quantity is very large. Although Laura doesn't help with the meat processing business, her store sells a lot of canned goods and fire legs, so she naturally knows some people from the processing factories. These people from the meat processing factories naturally need to collect some magic beasts that can be used for meat. It's not enough to just collect them from the homes of some commoners. More still needs to be supplied by some ranches. Ranches have always been a very profitable business, and Laura has always wanted to start one, but unfortunately, all the places in the Versailles Duchy that can be used to open ranches have already been occupied by the Versailles family, so she has never been able to do it. When Zhao Hai heard Laura say this, he smiled and said, that would be best. In the future, there will be more and more kinds of goods here, and there will be more and more opportunities for us to cooperate. Laura smiled and said, that's for sure, sir. I have another question I would like to ask. What kind of dishes did you have us eat today? Why haven't I seen them before? Zhao Hai knew that Laura would ask this question. He smiled slightly and said, those are some new varieties of magic vegetables that are unique to this place. You will definitely not see them in other parts of the continent. To be honest with Miss Laura, in addition to being a magician, I also have a strong interest in the research of various plants. Those vegetables are new varieties that I have researched by combining some wild plants and vegetables, but the yield is still too low, so there is no way to cooperate with Miss Laura. Zhao Hai is now in the stage of raising money. Those vegetables from Earth have never been seen on the continent before. If they are suddenly taken out like this, it will be difficult to sell them in large quantities. Therefore, Zhao Hai plans to slowly try planting those vegetables after his income stabilizes. Laura nodded, but turned to Zhao Hai and said, then can you give me some of those vegetables? I want to try the taste after I go back. Zhao Hai smiled and said, that's not a problem. When Miss Laura sends someone to pick up the magic radishes in 3 days, I will have those vegetables prepared for Miss Laura. Laura nodded. At this time, Green also walked in from outside the door, bowed to Zhao Hai, and said, sir, the firefin fish are ready, a total of 20, and they have all been quick frozen for preservation. Zhao Hai just nodded lightly, turned to Laura and said, it's getting late today, so I won't keep Miss Laura any longer. If Miss Laura has something to do in 3 days, you don't have to come in person. Laura and Kun Zheng stood up. Laura smiled and said, then it's settled. Please rest assured, sir, Laura will definitely handle the things you have entrusted to me. After saying that, she bowed to Zhao Hai and walked out the door. Zhao Hai sent Laura and the others all the way to the gate of the Green Stone Villa before letting Green take the aliens to send Laura and the others down the mountain, while he returned to the living room. Zhao Hai had just arrived in the living room when Green returned. As soon as he entered the room, Green took off his helmet and threw it aside, and said to Zhao Hai, young master, this time Laura and the others only wanted so few radishes, we still have a big gap in funds. Zhao Hai nodded and said, yes, but we can't rush it now. The quality of our radishes is there, and Laura will definitely want a lot of our radishes in the future. I'm not in such a hurry. Now we still have more than 1,000 gold coins in our hands. Grandpa Green still has to go to Casa City recently, first to buy some books about the animals and plants on the continent, second to post some tasks, to buy strange flowers and herbs, and third to pay attention to the slave trade. If we want to develop in the future, we will need a lot of slaves. Green nodded and turned to Zhao Hai and said, "Young master, the mines in Taishan have all been cleaned up. Do you think we can release the blue-eyed rabbits from the space to raise them?" Zhao Hai nodded and said, "Yes, but I want to wait until those oil presses arrive and we really start producing oil before we start raising them, so that those blue-eyed rabbits will have enough to eat. These days, I want to let Grandma Malin go to the lake in the mountains to see if there are any other magic beasts in the lake. If there are no other magic beasts, we can buy some scaleless fish fry and put them in." Green nodded and said, "Then after Laura and the others send those oil presses, we will install the oil presses, and then I will go to Casa City." Zhao Hai nodded and said, "Okay, it's okay to wait a few days. As long as the cooperation with Laura starts, we will have a steady stream of income. Although the current income is not high, it is enough for us to use. It's better not to be too public." Green nodded, his eyes shining, and said, "As long as the fruit oil is produced and the ranch can be produced, our income will definitely increase. Then we can buy more slaves and develop slowly." Zhao Hai smiled slightly and said, "Yes, we can't rush now. If we are too anxious, we will easily reveal flaws and the trouble will be even greater. In fact, our biggest trouble now is not how to develop, but the corpse swamp. The magic beasts there have always been a concern of mine. If the matter there is not resolved, our development will be in vain. Now I only hope that there will be progress with Zhao Zui and the others." When Green heard Zhao Hai say this, he didn't speak. He also knew that what Zhao Hai said was right. If the problem in the corpse swamp is not resolved, their ranches and farms can only be talked about. Otherwise, when the magic beasts in the corpse swamp riot, everything will be destroyed. Although Zhao Hai can put those things into the space, that is not a long-term solution. If their creatures become bigger in the future, relying on the space alone is not enough. The space ranch can only raise 1,000 animals at a time, but if they raise many kinds of animals, it may not be enough. The same is true for the farm. The farm is now only more than 10 acres of land. If it is only radishes, it can be supplied and it is very easy. Oil fruit is not a problem, but if other crops are added, it will be very troublesome. Therefore, the focus of their future development should still be outside. In this way, the problem of the corpse swamp has to be solved. With such a threat, it is very difficult for Zhao Hai and the others to develop. Chapter 122 Unfathomable. Chapter 122 Unfathomable. Laura and the other two were sitting in the carriage, with Sir and the others still following beside it. They had already left Luanxi Mountain, but Laura and the others were not talking. After a while, Laura opened the carriage windows on both sides of the carriage and said to Sir, "Sir, have you eaten yet?" Sir was stunned. He didn't quite understand Laura's intentions. Although he was Laura's guard leader, Laura had never cared about whether he had eaten or not. However, since Laura asked, he couldn't not answer. He immediately nodded and said, in response to "Miss, we have already eaten." Laura quickly said, "What did you eat?" Sir couldn't help but feel even more strange, but he still said, "The food was sent by Mr. Zhao Hai's undead creatures. There were pancakes, rabbit meat, and some vegetables that I have never seen before." Laura continued, "How was the taste?" Sir nodded and said, "It was delicious, and all the vegetables and meat they sent seemed to be magic vegetables, with strong magical power, even stronger than ordinary vegetables. One of the dishes seemed to be magic radish, which was several times stronger than the magic radish in our store." Laura nodded, closed the car window, turned to look at Kunjang and said, "Grandpa Kunjang, what do you think?" Kunjang looked at Laura and said, "Unfathomable. There must be a large force behind Zhao Hai. He should be a spokesperson for this large force. But what puzzles me is, which large force on the continent needs to make money in this way? The things produced by those large forces all have their own sales networks, and it shouldn't be our turn. Could it be specifically targeted at us?" After speaking, Kunjang immediately shook his head again, denying his own guess, and said, "Impossible. Our enemies now are at most those few heirs in the Magidal family, but we can't be considered their real enemies. After all, our current scene is too small, and it is nothing compared to the other people in the Magidal family. We can't be considered a threat to them, and they can't possibly send someone to plot against us like this. And the Magidal family has never obtained fire ding fish, but Zhao Hai has a large number of fire ding fish in his hands. Obviously, he can't be our enemy specifically to deal with us. We are not worth the enemy's effort." Laura nodded and said, "Yes, from Mr. Zhao Hai's words, we can hear that he seems to have a not-so-small territory. This territory can produce a large amount of oil fruit, can raise fish, can run a ranch, and can also produce fire ding fish. I really can't imagine what kind of territory on the continent is like this. Even if there is such a territory, it should have been occupied long ago. Why would Zhao Hai think of cooperating with us? Kun Zhang frowned and said, "This is really hard to say." He said that he is very researched on plants, and it doesn't seem to be a lie. If he doesn't research plants, it is impossible to produce that kind of quality magic radish, and it is even more impossible to produce those vegetables that have not been seen before. And did you notice when eating today? They didn't eat much of that fire ding fish, even those servants were like that. Obviously, in their eyes, fire ding fish is not a rare thing, and the blue-eyed rabbit they eat contains magical power that is 10 times that of ordinary blue-eyed rabbits. As far as I know, there is only one way to feed such blue-eyed rabbits, that is, feeding them with magic vegetables, and it must be the kind of high-quality magic vegetables with sufficient magical power. This shows that he must have a not-so-small territory, and his territory also produces magic vegetables. He bought blue-eyed rabbits from Casa City before, most likely to use them as breeding rabbits. Laura nodded and said, "I told him to form an alliance with the Magidal family, but he was unwilling and only wanted to form an alliance with us. It doesn't seem like he wants to target the Magidal family, nor does it seem like he wants to target us, and his origin is so mysterious. It's really strange." According to reason, a black magician as powerful as him on the continent should also be a famous figure, but I have never heard of his sect. The strangest thing is that the warrior following him seems to be of a high level, and the maid magician's level seems to be not low, and he can even turn a light magician into a high-level undead creature. There are too many secrets on this person, right? Kun Zhang nodded and said, "Indeed, there are really a lot of secrets on Zhao Hai. The warrior beside him is around level 8. Even if I fight him one-on-one, I'm afraid I'll lose more than win. His mate is now at least a level 6 magician. Judging from that girl's age, she is definitely a magical genius, and his cook is also a magician, and her level is only higher than that girl. If he really has more than 1,000 undead creature summons, then Zhao Hai's power is not small. In the Versailles Principality, he can almost walk sideways." Laura frowned and said, "No matter what, it seems that this Zhao Hai has no malice towards us now. We can do business with him. If he can really provide us with magic radish of such good quality, then it will be very beneficial to us. As long as we are careful when doing business with him. After all, having such an ally is much better than having such an enemy, and we also need such an ally." Kun Zhang nodded and said, "Moreover, I suspect that Zhao Hai's identity may be shady, and he is not just a black magician. There are many black magicians on the continent, but there are not many black magicians who don't even open their veils when eating. Zhao Hai did this, and it can't be because he is ugly, it must be because he is afraid of being seen by others." Laura smiled slightly and said, "No matter what their identity is, it has nothing to do with us, as long as we know that he has no hostility towards us." Kun Zhang let out a sigh of relief and nodded, and said, "Miss is right, no matter what he is, as long as he has no hostility towards us, we can cooperate with him. However, we still need to pay attention to this person. He hasn't been here in Luanxi Mountain for a long time, but he can get so many fire ding fish. This is not an easy task in itself, especially under the surveillance of so many eyes, and transporting the fire ding fish to Luanxi Mountain without those people noticing at all. This in itself shows his strength. He also has a space equipment in his hand, and he knows our whereabouts clearly. It seems that he should also have arranged people in Casa City. This person does things flawlessly, and we must be careful." Laura nodded and said, "Grandpa Kun Zhang, don't worry, I know what to do, but I don't think he will do anything to us. As long as we don't deal with him and maintain a cooperative relationship with him, we will be fine, and Grandpa Kun Zhang, you can also see that Mr. Zhao Hai has a good impression of us." Kun Zhang said with a smile, "That's true, haha. I think he has taken a fancy to you, miss. Otherwise, he wouldn't want to cooperate with us." When Laura heard Kun Zhang say this, she couldn't help but act coquettishly. "Grandpa Kun Zhang, what are you talking about? How could Mr. Zhao Hai take a fancy to me? Besides, even if he takes a fancy to me, I may not take a fancy to him. He makes himself so mysterious that he doesn't even dare to show his face." Kun Zhang couldn't help but laugh loudly, making Laura's face even redder. Laura had a good impression of Zhao Hai. After all, Zhao Hai had saved her life, and he was so mysterious, which made Laura more curious about Zhao Hai in addition to gratitude. When a woman is curious about a man, I'm afraid it's not far from her heart falling. Laura and the others have now made up their minds to cooperate with Zhao Hai. In fact, if it were the patriarch of the Magidal family, he would never cooperate with Zhao Hai. Zhao Hai has too many secrets, and secrets mean trouble, and the strength that Zhao Hai has shown is not weak. Ordinary big families will not cooperate with people like him who hide their heads and show their tails, for fear of being plotted against by them. But Laura is not afraid, because she herself has nothing worth plotting against by people of Zhao Hai's level. Although the things that Zhao Hai showed were all made from the space, Laura and the others don't know the existence of the space. In their opinion, the things that Zhao Hai showed are strength, a strength that is almost not inferior to the magical family. People with such strength don't bother to plot against a small person like her, so she dares to cooperate with Zhao Hai. At this time, Zhao Hai was also preparing to cooperate with Laura. He had to prepare a few large empty rooms in the castle to make an oil press, and reorganize the mine to prepare for raising blue-eyed rabbits. He also had to check with Merlin and the others to see if there were any water-based magic beasts in the mountain lake. The reason why Zhao Hai didn't take any action before was because he didn't have any funds in his hands. Although he got more than 1,000 gold coins from Galen and the others, if there was no stable source of income, these gold coins would be spent sooner or later, so Zhao Hai didn't dare to move these gold coins until he reached a deal with Laura. Now he has formed an alliance with Laura, and the first payment will be credited in 3 days. Although it is very small, it is considered a stable source of income. He believes that their income will increase more and more in the future, so he should start preparing for things that he didn't prepare before. When Zhao Hai and the others returned to Iron Mountain Castle, it was already afternoon. Those slaves were not idle now. A large group was still repairing the castle, and those female slaves were still planting oil fruit trees and alfalfa on the mountain. Iron Mountain is very big, and she can't plant all the things she wants to plant in a short time. Besides, even if they are all planted, they can't be left alone. Now is the time when weeds are growing, and they have to watch and weed. After Zhao Hai came back, he immediately arranged for people to clean up the rooms. There were still a lot of large rooms in the outer castle, which were originally the castle's warehouses, but they were abandoned because no one lived there for a long time. Now they can be used as oil presses. Chapter 123 Crystal Hornworm. It wasn't until he started preparing that Zhao Hai realized he had oversimplified things, thinking he could produce fruit oil as long as he had an oil press. But when it came to the actual preparation, he discovered he was missing quite a few things. First, they needed a place to clean the oil fruits. After the oil fruits were taken out, they had to be cleaned before they could be pressed for oil. Otherwise, the fruit oil would contain fruit hairs from the skin, affecting the quality. Second, they needed to continuously feed the oil fruits into the oil press, which required manpower and tools. Manpower was easy to solve, as Zhao Hai could use undead creatures to replace it, but he needed to prepare the tools separately. Although he had a lot of supplies, he didn't have the tools for oil pressing yet. Third, they needed to prepare tools like wooden barrels or iron boxes. They couldn't just let the oil flow onto the ground, right? And 1,000 caddies of oil a day was not a small amount, so they needed to prepare a lot of barrels. But right now, Zhao Hai didn't have any carpenters and no one could make wooden barrels. The cost of iron barrels was too high, and Zhao Hai didn't have enough money to buy many. He could only buy some wooden barrels to use first. This made Zhao Hai realize that the money he had was really not enough to do anything. Even if he wanted to develop faster, it was impossible. Zhao Hai had no choice but to wait until the oil press arrived before going to Casa City to see how much the wooden barrels cost, and then prepare to buy some. Zhao Hai was now a little regretful. He shouldn't have bought the oil press first. It might have been better to save the money to buy something else. What he should be doing now was to save up some blue-eyed rabbits and then have Laura find him a buyer. After all, this was equivalent to a cost-free business for Zhao Hai. Although the oil pressing factory might not be able to take shape on a large scale in a short time due to funding issues, the rooms still needed to be cleaned up. When the oil presses arrived, there had to be a place to install them. After letting the slaves clean the rooms, Zhao Hai and Merlin left the castle and went directly to Mountain Lake. There were no fish in Mountain Lake, possibly due to the toxins from the beast tide, but it couldn't be ruled out that there might be powerful water-type magical beasts in the lake. If there really were water-type magical beasts, the fish they threw in would be like feeding the magical beasts. To be safe, Zhao Hai decided to let Merlin carefully investigate Mountain Lake to determine if there were any magical beasts here. Green and Meg also followed. If they really found powerful water-type magical beasts in Mountain Lake, they could also help deal with them. Although they had checked once before, Merlin checked even more carefully this time. At the same time, she was also checking the direction of the water flow. After all, if they didn't check the direction of the water flow in Mountain Lake, no matter how many fish they threw in, they would run away. Fortunately, there really weren't any water-type magical beasts in the lake, and the water flow didn't seem to be very rapid. There were also no creatures in the water. It seemed that the toxicity of the magical beasts and undead creatures in the swamp was too strong, so there was no life in Mountain Lake. Zhao Hai was still a little worried, and sent an undead creature into the lake to find the source of the water. However, unfortunately, the source of the water couldn't be found at all. The lake was strange. On Zhao Hai's right-hand side, there was an inlet, and on Zhao Hai's left-hand side, there was an outlet. Both the inlet and outlet were mineshafts dug by the dwarves, but these two openings had problems. The message from the undead creature was that the outlet and inlet were blocked by something, and they couldn't pass through. This surprised Zhao Hai, and he quickly entered the space and opened the screen to see what was underwater. The situation at the bottom of the water surprised Zhao Hai. Although he couldn't see any large fish or magical beasts in the lake, it didn't seem empty at all. There were many aquatic plants in the water, and most importantly, Zhao Hai actually saw some coral-like things in the water. This was what surprised Zhao Hai. He didn't understand why there were coral-like things at the bottom of the lake. He remembered that corals generally lived in the sea, so why would they be at the bottom of the water? But unfortunately, he was too far away from the outlet and inlet to see what was blocking them. Zhao Hai had no choice but to call back the undead creature he had sent into the water, and then gave him the evil spirit staff, and asked him to go to the outlet and inlet again with the evil spirit staff. In fact, Zhao Hai already had an answer in his mind. The outlet and inlet were likely blocked by corals. If that was the case, he wouldn't have to worry about anything and could just raise fish in the lake. Merlin also watched the screen with Zhao Hai. Soon, the undead creature arrived at the inlet of the lake. The inlet of this lake was very large, more than 10 meters high and more than 20 meters wide, but now the inlet was completely blocked by a coral-like thing. This thing was blue and looks like blue crystal in the water, which was very beautiful. As soon as Merlin saw this thing, she nodded and said, "So it's crystal hornbugs." "That's right, only this kind of thing can hide from my detection and have the possibility of surviving in this kind of place." Zhao Hai looked at Merlin in confusion and said, "Grandma Merlin, what are crystal hornbugs?" Merlin smiled and said, "These crystal hornbugs are a very special water-type creature. The individuals are very small and ordinary detection magic can't detect them at all. This kind of bug has no attack power and no one knows how they survive in the water. They only know that this kind of thing can secrete a crystal-like substance like magic crystals. This crystal is very hard. Even ordinary level 5 warriors can hardly hurt them with swords. The most important thing is that this kind of bug can adapt to any environment. As long as it is flowing water and reaches a certain depth, they can survive and slowly form this antler-like blue crystal. Moreover, this kind of bug is not afraid of poison. Some alchemists will specifically collect this kind of bug to make some detoxification medicine." When Zhao Hai heard her say this, he understood that this crystal horn bug was a bit like an evolved coral insect. It could survive in any watery environment and was not afraid of poison. No wonder there were no water-type magical beasts in Mountain Lake, but there were so many coral-like things. Zhao Hai looked at the coral-like things made by the crystal horn bugs and couldn't help but nodded and said, "This is good. We can save trouble and raise fish directly in the lake." Merlin smiled and said, "Not only that, in fact, the crystals formed by this crystal horn bug, although not very useful, are very beautiful. Ordinary nobles like this thing very much and like to put them at home. As long as this crystal is placed in the room, it can prevent the attack of some poison-type magic. Even if someone wants to poison you, you can find it. This crystal has a characteristic. When placed at home, if toxins enter within 5 meters of it, it will emit a faint fragrance. Therefore, many large nobles have a lot of this thing at home. The price of this thing is also very expensive. There are many of these blue crystals in the lake. If the young master digs these things out, he can also sell a lot of money." Zhao Hai smiled and said, "Forget it, let them stay in the lake. This way the lake will look more beautiful. Don't worry about digging it up for now anyway, this thing can't run away." Merlin didn't have any opinions. In fact, she knew that crystal horn bugs had another benefit. That is, if you use a place with this kind of crystal horn bug to raise fish, the fish will rarely get sick and the survival rate is very high. It's just that she felt that it was not necessary to tell Zhao Hai this. Zhao Hai space can be used to raise fish and the survival rate is 100%, which is much stronger than this crystal horn bug. However, Zhao Hai's decision not to dig these blue crystals is also beneficial. After all, he will have to raise them on a large scale in the future, and Zhao Hai's space cannot do it. He can only put them in the lake. With these things, it is very beneficial to those fish. After seeing this place, Zhao Hai was relieved. Now, as long as he can get the fry of scaleless fish, their fish farm will be considered established. Back at the castle, those few large warehouses were ready. Zhao Hai and Green looked at them and thought they were good, so they returned to the space. In the next 3 days, Zhao Hai had been waiting at the Green Stone Manor for Laura to send someone to pick up the radishes. These days, he had also planted radishes in the space. In these 3 days, he had harvested 9 seasons of radishes. Now, even if Laura wanted hundreds of thousands of caddies of radishes at once, he would not be afraid that he could not get them out. In these 3 days, he also harvested 2 seasons of oil fruits. Now he really has a lot of oil fruits in his hand, almost 10 million caddies. This is the 3rd batch of oil fruits he has planted, and this time the harvested oil fruits are the 1st season of the 3rd batch. In addition to the oil fruits, in these 3 days, Zhao Hai also harvested 1,000 mature large rabbits and 70,000 small rabbits. However, he did not harvest any scale horn horses. He raised all the rabbits in the pasture. In Zhao Hai's opinion, the scale horn horse is a bit of a tasteless thing now. Even ordinary meat processing plants do not accept scale horn horses because the meat of this animal is very coarse and not delicious. And the army does not want this thing because it can only be used to carry things and not as a mount for cavalry. It is very good for plowing the land, but now Zhao Hai really does not have much land to plow, so these horses are temporarily useless. In these 3 days, Zhao Hai was also almost finished transforming the land in the Iron Mountain Canyon. As long as the land there is transformed, Zhao Hai is ready to directly send some slaves in to build a small village there and let those slaves live there, making it a relatively independent existence. Chapter 124 Oil Press. Zhao Hai had always placed great importance on the canyon, as he had designated it as the most stable rear base outside of the space. The terrain in the canyon was very concealed, and the surrounding mountains blocked the cold wind. In addition, water was not a problem, and there were both water and land routes for communication with the outside world. It could be said to be very convenient and more suitable for human habitation. Zhao Hai believed that he would have more and more subordinates in the future, and the area of the black soil wilderness was such that, as long as he had the strength, he could completely build a small principality here. With more manpower, it would naturally be impossible for everyone to live in the Iron Mountain Castle. Those people would have to be divided up to establish villages. However, before he had enough strength to establish a country, Zhao Hai could only build a small village in the canyon as a pilot project to see what problems needed to be improved so as to facilitate the establishment of larger villages in the future. But now the land in the canyon had not yet been truly improved and it was not yet time to build a village. Zhao Hai only had such an idea at the moment. 3 days passed quickly and Zhao Hai and his people were almost ready. Now they were just waiting for Laura and the others to send the oil press so that Green could go to Casa City. On the 3rd day at noon, the Magital family's convoy arrived at the foot of the Rocky Mountain. This time, Laura did not show up and Green was still the one who came forward. They also did not let the Magital family's people come up to the Rocky Mountain, but instead hitched up the 5 carriages that Green had originally bought on the mountain, sent the radishes down the mountain, and then loaded the oil press that Laura had helped to buy onto the carriages. In addition to these 5 oil presses, the Magital family also gave Green 200 gold coins and a set of books. This set of books was a complete collection of animals and plants on the continent, written by a pharmacist on the continent. This set of books was a gift from Laura to Zhao Hai. Last time, Zhao Hai had told Laura that he had some research on plants and was also planning to open a ranch. Laura wanted to form an alliance with Zhao Hai, so she would not let go of such an opportunity and bought this set of books as a gift. This set of books was rare on the continent. Back then, the pharmacist spent a full 20 years collecting a large amount of information on animals and plants on the continent in order to write this book. He also visited many pharmacists and alchemists, and finally went to many places alone to study those animals and plants before he wrote this set of books. Because this set of books was not a magical book, it was not printed much. Generally, only some pharmacists or alchemists would have a set. In addition to giving the Magital family those 10,000 caddies of radishes, Zhao Hai and his people also gave them 110 fire-ding fish. These were all what Zhao Hai had promised Laura. The extra 10 fire-ding fish were Zhao Hai's gift to Laura. The oil presses that Laura sent to Zhao Hai were not very large. The 5 strong oil presses only took up 5 carriages. When they went back, they could just load the radishes and take them away. Green did not bother much and pulled the 5 oil presses up the mountain. When he got to the mountain, he did not unload the carriages, and then he asked Zhao Hai to put the carriages into the space. These oil presses unexpectedly had a manual, guiding you on how to arrange the oil press. This made Zhao Hai feel very puzzled. He really did not understand what the situation was on the Ark continent. If you say there is no science here, their pharmacy and alchemy are somewhat related to science. If you say there is no machine civilization here, oil presses like this are also designed very precisely and cannot be said to have no science at all. Moreover, there is also magic and battle kai that are not available on Earth, which really made Zhao Hai not know what to say. After receiving the oil press and 200 gold coins, Zhao Hai and his people went directly to Iron Mountain Castle and installed the oil press in those cleaned warehouses. It must be said that the design of this oil press was really good. It was more than 3 meters high in total. The top was a feeding bucket, which was very large. The bottom was something like a millstone, with a long rod on the outside, which could be attached to a magical beast to pull. Below was an oil outlet, which could be pulled out with a pipe, and oil could be directly extracted from here. There was also a slag outlet. It looked very simple, but the area occupied by the entire machine exceeded 20 square meters, and the volume was not small. However, the oil press could be disassembled into several parts, otherwise a carriage would not be able to pull it. Zhao Hai looked at it. The feeding port was too high from the ground. If you want to add materials, there are only 2 ways. One is to build some boards next to the feeding port to form a slope, and people can directly push the cart to the feeding port to add materials. The other way is to use a conveyor belt. Using a conveyor belt is a relatively easy way. You can directly load the oil fruit onto the conveyor belt below, and then send it to the feeding port through the conveyor belt. This oil press did not design any conveyor belt, and it is estimated that no one on this continent uses this thing. Zhao Hai thought of it because he had seen it used in some granaries on Earth. The method of building boards is commonly used on this continent. Some people directly dig a large pit on the ground and put the oil press in the pit, so that materials can be added on the ground. However, after the materials are discharged, people have to transport the oil drums from the pit. Zhao Hai did not want to use this method because he would have to dig a pit in the castle. That was not an easy task. The ground in the castle was all made of stone. If you want to dig a pit, you have to remove all the stones, and even the house would have to be demolished. Zhao Hai still wanted to make a conveyor belt. It was not difficult to make a conveyor belt, and the required power could be directly obtained from the oil press. However, some modifications were needed. Fortunately, this oil press was made of metal throughout. If you want to modify it, you only need to add some metal parts on it. But now the problem came. There was no blacksmith among Zhao Hai's group. If he really wanted to make a conveyor belt, he would have to find a blacksmith, and the blacksmith's ability could not be too weak. Zhao Hai asked Green and the others to find out that although there are many machines on the continent that can use magic crystals as power, simple machines like this that can only squeeze fruit oil are really not worthy of using magic crystals as power. I am afraid that the money from selling the oil he squeezed cannot buy magic crystals, so this kind of machine is generally only designed as water power, wind power or animal power. Since there was no way to make a conveyor belt, he could only build boards. Fortunately, they were not short of boards now, but they did not have a small cart for transporting oil fruit, nor did they have wooden barrels, so Green had to go to Casa City to buy them. Green also knew this situation, so he immediately set off for Casa City, while Zhao Hai began to build boards for these oil presses at Iron Mountain Castle. At the same time, he also had to prepare a place for washing the oil fruit. Fortunately, the water source in their city was very convenient. Zhao Hai directly asked and the others to build a huge stone pool outside these oil mills to wash the oil fruit, and then transport the oil fruit to the house and send it to the oil press through the built boards. The water in the pool was always flowing, so there was no need to change the water. The small hairs on this oil fruit can also become fish food if they flow into the moat. However, Zhao Hai also calculated that an oil press needs at least 1 person to add materials and 1 person to watch the oil and slag. If you include the person who cleans the oil fruit, it takes at least 4 people. 5 oil presses need at least 20 people to complete. Zhao Hai was not worried about the manpower. Zhao Hai did not want to use those slaves to work in this oil mill, because this oil mill has to work 24 hours a day. If all those slaves are used, there must be at least 3 shifts. That is to say, if those slaves are used, at least 60 people are needed to ensure the normal operation of the oil mill. Zhao Hai only has more than 100 people in his hand now, and it is obviously impossible to transfer 60 people to do this oil mill, so Zhao Hai decided to use undead creatures to do this oil mill. 20 humanoid undead creatures are responsible for adding materials and oil extraction, but Zhao Hai wants to use scale-horned horses for the animal power that drives the oil press. It is not that Zhao Hai does not want to use other undead creatures to replace the scale-horned horses, but there are no suitable ones. The undead creatures he collected last time all ran out of the corpse swamp. Not only are they huge in size, but also these undead creatures are not suitable for pulling things. The power to push this oil press does not need to be too great, but it must be stable. Naturally, aliens, which are so huge in size, cannot pull the oil press. Those smaller ones like big rats, their speed of advancement is not stable, and there is no way, so in the end, Zhao Hai still wants to use scale-horned horses to drive the oil press. Zhao Hai does not have many adult scale-horned horses in his hand now, but it is enough. Zhao Hai has already decided that if it really does not work, he will kill a few scale-horned horses, and then turn these scale-horned horses into undead creatures, so that the problem will be solved. Zhao Hai is now ready for everything, just waiting for Green to buy back what they need to start work officially. The start of the oil mill is not a trivial matter. As long as the oil mill starts, they can get another stable source of income. At the same time, they will also have oil residue, a superior feed. The rabbit farm can also be set up. In this way, they will have another stable source of income, which is really too important for the current Buda family. Chapter 125. Chance Laura stood with some worry in front of the most famous Beyond Flour daily goods store in Casa City. This store was the largest and most famous one under Laura's management, the main store for the Magidal family's shops in the Principality of Versailles, where Laura usually held the fort. The reason Laura was waiting at the store today was for the team returning from Stony Mountain. They weren't bringing back a large quantity this time, only 10,000 pounds of devil carrot, but Laura was taking this delivery very seriously. Besides it being the first cooperation with Zhao Hai, there was another important reason: the quality of the radishes Zhao Hai had shown her. Laura specialized in daily goods, and although radishes were considered a low-end consumer product in their area, good quality radishes could greatly impact her business. It was like two vegetable stores both selling radishes. One store's radishes were big, good quality, and cheap, while the other store also had radishes, but they weren't as good and the price was the same. Naturally, everyone would go to the first store. When you go to a vegetable store, you don't just buy radishes, you also buy other goods. This would naturally make their store's business better than other stores. That was the real purpose of these radishes. Although Zhao Hai assured Laura that all the radishes produced there were of the same quality, Laura still didn't quite believe it. In business, you must always maintain this mentality. Laura only understood this principle after being deceived a few times. Kunjang was also in the store. Normally, Laura and Kunjang wouldn't care about a small cooperation involving only 10,000 pounds of goods, but this time was different. This cooperation was related to the rise and fall of Laura's branch. Just then, in the distance, a small team approached. From far away, they could see the large Beyond Flour flag on the team, letting everyone know that this team belonged to the Magidal Merchant Guild. As soon as Laura saw the team returning, she immediately walked towards the backyard. She was very clear that the team's return meant the goods had arrived. The goods wouldn't be placed directly in the front yard, but would be placed in the warehouse in the backyard and then displayed in the front store. Kunjang also followed behind Laura. They really wanted to know if the devil carrots that Zhao Hai had sent were as good as the ones they had seen in Stony Mountain. The team quickly entered the yard behind the store. This yard was very large, with many rooms, and a portion of the area was separated specifically for raising horses and parking carts. The most space was taken up by warehouses, followed by some office space and living quarters. Although no one dared to touch the Magidal family's property in Casa City, the livestock still needed to be taken care of at night, and the store's backyard would still have guards on duty at night. Leading the team was none other than Sean. Sean had now been promoted. He was no longer the foreman of the porters. He was now the captain of the team responsible for trading with Zhao Hai and his people. In the 3 days since Laura returned from Zhao Hai's place, she didn't just help Zhao Hai purchase those 5 oil presses. That wasn't much of a task at all. There were many places to buy them in Casa City. In those 3 days, Laura's main task was to clean up her store. This cleanup didn't mean cleaning the store itself, but rather removing all the people in the store who weren't loyal to her. Some members of the Magidal family had participated in the attack on her way to Blackstone Fortress. At the same time as she was attacked, a large number of people had been placed in their stores, wanting to undermine Laura and her people. However, Laura wasn't so easily provoked. After returning this time, she hadn't planned to take action so quickly, but rather to fight those guys properly. However, after seeing Zhao Hai, forming an alliance with Zhao Hai, and agreeing to cooperate, Laura had no intention of fighting those people anymore. If she let Zhao Hai discover that her store's internal affairs were still unstable, it might affect Zhao Hai's determination to cooperate with her. Therefore, upon returning, Laura used 3 days to clear out all the people from other factions of the Magidal family who had been arranged in the store, and placed some of her trusted subordinates in important positions. Sean had always been loyal to Laura, and he was also someone who had been in contact with Zhao Hai, so this time Laura promoted him to the position of team captain. Although both the team captain and the porter foreman were captains, and relatively speaking, the team captain was more hardworking, running around everywhere to pull and deliver goods almost all year round, the treatment of the team captain was much better than that of the porter foreman. Sean knew that Laura attached great importance to the cooperation with Zhao Hai, but he didn't expect her to value it to this extent, with Laura and Kunjing actually waiting for them in the yard. Sean immediately walked quickly to Laura and greeted her with a bow. "Greetings, miss." "Greetings, chief manager." Laura simply nodded slightly and quickly walked to a carriage. The carriage itself had a wooden box, which was very high, over a meter, and could hold a lot of things. The box was covered with coarse cloth, and the coarse cloth was carefully secured with ropes. As soon as Sean saw Laura's movements, he immediately walked to the carriage, untied the ropes, and lifted the coarse cloth. Laura leaned her head into the carriage box. The carriage box was covered with a layer of weeds, and on top of the weeds were rows of tender white radishes, carefully arranged and not at all messy. Laura reached out and took out a white radish. This radish was no different from the white radishes she had seen at Kingshi Manor that day. Although the texture of the radish might be slightly different, the size was about the same, and there were no wormholes. The skin was smooth and watery, and it was clear at a glance that it was a high-quality product. Laura put the radish down and picked up another one, and the result was the same. She weighed it in her hand, and the weight of the two white radishes was almost equal. Laura turned to Sean and said, "Have you seen all the devil radishes? Are they all of this quality?" Sean quickly nodded and said, "Yes, I have seen all the devil radishes. They are all of this quality, and the weight is almost the same. This is the best devil radish I have ever seen in all these years." Laura turned to look at Kunjing, and both of them had a look of shock on their faces. You must know that devil radish is not a valuable commodity. Precisely because of this, the quality requirements for devil radish are relatively not very strict. Some major devil radish producing areas, they harvest the devil radishes in the ground and sell them directly to distributors like Laura and the others. They do not specifically pick out some of the bad devil radishes. This has resulted in the devil radishes they sell being of various sizes and shapes, and some particularly bad ones will be disposed of at a low price. Many commoners with good incomes will also buy some devil radishes with poor appearances to eat, but the devil radishes that Zhao Hai gave them were all of very good quality. There was only one explanation for this. Zhao Hai and the others had picked out the bad ones beforehand. Why would he do this? Doing so would make him lose a lot of devil radishes, and their devil radishes were not more expensive than those sold by others. Could it be that their devil radishes just grew to be of this quality? That's impossible. Even the most knowledgeable person in plant research cannot guarantee that everything they grow will turn out like this. Laura was right. Everything Zhao Hai grew was really like this. You must know that things in the space have some digitized properties. Digitized things are almost all carved out of the same mold. How could they be like ordinary land, where there are all kinds of things? Laura put the white radish in her hand back into the carriage, turned to Sean and said, "Immediately put these devil radishes into the warehouse, and put them on the shelves for sale tomorrow. Put them separately from other devil radishes and see how they sell." Sean responded and immediately directed people to unload the carriage, while Laura and Kunjing returned to Laura's private office in the backyard. As soon as she entered the office, Laura immediately said to Kunjing, "Grandpa Kunjing, what do you think?" Kunjing sat down and smiled slightly. It seems that Zhao Hai is very sincere in cooperating with us, and he must have a piece of land of very good quality behind him. The area of this land is not small, and it can produce such high-quality devil radishes. Laura frowned and said, "But even if his land is good, it is impossible for every devil radish to be of such good quality. If he picks out the bad ones beforehand, wouldn't the loss be too great?" Kunjing smiled slightly and said, "This is exactly why I said he is sincere in cooperating. It seems that he wants to build a brand effect. He has picked out all the bad devil radishes and sent us all the good ones. Naturally, we will sell these good devil radishes together. Gradually, people will only recognize his kind of devil radish. Hee. This is the way to do business." When Laura heard Kunjing say this, she couldn't help but be stunned. Then her eyes lit up and said, "So we can cooperate with them for a long time? If he can provide us with this quality of devil radishes in large quantities, then our store can become famous on the continent." Kunjing smiled slightly and said, "That's right. This is definitely an opportunity for us. If Zhao Hai can really provide us with this devil radish in large quantities, I think it won't be long before the daily necessities market of the far side principality will be ours." Laura stood up excitedly. Now, although their business is very good in the far side principality, the other major chambers of commerce on the continent also have their own family branches in the far side principality. The competition between them is still very fierce. Although Laura's business ability is not weak, she cannot get any help from the Majdal family, so at most, she can only tie with the shops of the other major chambers of commerce. It is impossible to truly suppress those companies. But now there is an opportunity in front of Laura. As long as she seizes this opportunity, Then in the future, the daily necessities market in the Farside Principality will be dominated by her family, and the shops of those families will be firmly suppressed by them.
Thanks for joining Fanfiction Reader. If you enjoyed it, hit subscribe and come back for more fan-made adventures.